Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Cabbage Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Deku Had Technopathy Quirk? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Morning classes went on as usual, with Shudo finding them rather boring. He couldn't wait for his support engineering classes to start so he could go back to the labs. He ended up testing out of English and math for those, Uncle Zashi and ectoplasm. He diligently sat through lectures, taking meticulous notes and absorbing the information presented. Yet, despite his best efforts to stay focused, his thoughts continually wandered back to his ongoing project in the support lab. The Meowdos Model CMK, the -7 Malawian Quatches, was Shudo's best work so far. He couldn't wait to show it to Izuku. It had enhanced sensory capabilities, improved mobility, and a rudimentary AI upgrade that emulated more complex and cat-like behaviors. Shudo might have spent a few too many hours in cat cafes observing the cats interacting, for whenever Izuku wasn't manually controlling them. Shudo had even integrated a feature allowing the Meowdos to react to catnip, adding a touch of whimsy to their functionality. Shudo had been so engrossed in his work that he nearly forgot he had to get to the class and almost arrived late. Thank Netsu he managed to get on time. He shuddered at the thought of what Uncle Shoyudo would have done if he was late. Most likely, Shudo would be running suicide sprints until he passed out, or maybe he'd have Shudo have detention with Midnight and be forced to hear one of her lectures on SEC education. Shudo had already heard horror stories about this from the older students. Anyway, he barely got to the class on time, but at least he did it. Did he remember to turn off his soldering iron before leaving? It will be fine. Probably. As lunchtime finally arrived, Shudo reached for his lunchbox, intent on running straight to the support labs. However, his plans were thwarted when a small, green ball of synthetic fur settled onto his lap. "Oh, come on, Meadows," Shudo protested half-heartedly. "Nope," Izuku countered, sounding far too smug. "You're not eating in the lab again, Shudo. Your dad specifically asked me to ensure you actually eat the lunch he made for you." Shudo knew he could easily push Izuku aside, but, "You don't move a sleeping cat. It's the law," Hitoshi said from behind Shudo, pulling a desk closer and settling in with his own lunch. "He's not sleeping," Shudo pointed out. "And technically he's not a real cat." "Same thing, Shudo," Hitoshi shrugged nonchalantly. "As I said before, he acts like a cat, looks like a cat, is fluffy like a cat, and purrs like a cat. As far as I'm concerned, he's a cat. He sure likes to capitalize on that." Shudo smiled as he scratched behind Izuku's ear. "Well, you can't move him. That's the law." Hitoshi smirked and raised an eyebrow at Shudo. "You're not going to break the law, are you? Like an evil villain." Shudo sighed, resigning himself to Izuku's insistence. "Fine, I'll eat here," he conceded, unable to hide his amusement. As they settled into lunch, Shudo found himself relaxing, the stress of unfinished projects momentarily forgotten. Izuku curled up contentedly on his lap, purring softly. Though he wouldn't admit it aloud, the break was welcome. The three of them sat in companionable silence. Shudo and Hitoshi were not men of many words, and Izuku seemed content to purr instead of chattering away like he usually did. Though Shudo was pretty sure the Meowdos could purr and talk at the same time, Izuku seemed quite happy with the silence. But beneath the calm exterior, Shudo sensed Izuku's underlying anxiety. After lunch, they would have heroics with all might. It wasn't just the fact that Izuku had a personal history with the man, he would also be assisting the #1 hero in class. The thought still made Shudo's blood boil every time he considered everything the so-called #1 hero had caused Izuku. All Might didn't even remember him. To the hero, Izuku was likely just another casualty in his illustrious career. Or perhaps All Might didn't even see him as that. After all, his views on quirkless individuals were no secret. It was one of the biggest reasons why the discrimination in Japan had gotten so bad in so little time, after all. The hero wouldn't feel any guiltier about a quirkless kid dying because of him than he would about crushing a fly. Still, Shudo had to calm down. Stressing over this right now wouldn't help anyone. He was sure Izuku could deal with All Might one way or the other. There was no way Nezu would just let All Might do whatever he wanted in his school. For now, Shudo decided to focus on appreciating the lunch his dad had worked hard to make him in the company of his friends. 010100000111011101010. As much as Izuku wished lunch would last forever, time waited for no one. Far too early for his taste, the bell rang, signaling the end of their break, and his classmates started filing back into the classroom. With a resigned sigh, Izuku jumped down from Shudo's lap and padded back to the front of the class. For this lesson, he would be fine staying in Meowdos mode. It was just a simple costume critique, after all. Not even All Might could mess that up. The classroom quickly filled up with students chatting and getting settled. Izuku found his usual spot on Shudo's desk. His ears twitched as he caught most of the conversations in the class. Most were excitedly chattering about who they thought their heroics teacher would be. Many seemed to hope for Shochan. Izuku secretly wished it was Shochan, too. "I am here." The booming voice reverberated through the classroom, instantly silencing all other noise. Izuku's mechanical ears flattened against his head involuntarily. Coming through the door like a normal person. Shoving the door with such force that made it bounce off the wall, All Might burst in. Izuku saw a few students wincing at the noise, their sensitive hearing taking the brunt of All Might's entrance. "Welcome to Foundational Hero Studies class." Or simply heroics for short. All Might continued bellowing. Had he ever heard of an inside voice? Not even Present Mic was that loud in class, and he had a voice quirk. As All Might launched into his introductory speech, Izuku settled in on the desk, mostly tuning the man out. He wasn't really interested in hearing the hero talk endlessly. The less Izuku had to interact with him, the better. That is until Izuku heard a few words that made him freeze. "Today, we'll be doing battle trials. So, grab your costume and follow me to ground beta." Battle trials? Today was supposed to be just a costume. Battle trials were something that only the late second and third year students did. This was far too advanced for first years. "Oh my, that's not the lesson Nezu approved," Izuku hissed at the man, who simply ignored him and kept walking. "All Might." Izuku tried to get in front of him, but the man just kept walking. Izuku saw the hero's right leg spark, and then everything went black. Suddenly, Izuku found himself back in one of the corridor cameras. Did All Might just? Izuku muttered to himself, his virtual consciousness reeling from the sudden shutdown. He quickly redirected the camera's view to where they had been just moments ago. That son of A.B. There, against the wall, lay the Meowdos he had been controlling just a second ago. It was completely broken, the impact of All Might's kick evident in the shattered casing and exposed circuitry still sparking. Izuku had no doubt that several students also saw what just happened. As he followed them through the cameras, he saw several people whispering to each other and glancing back at the broken robot. Shudo, however, was looking at it with a heartbroken expression. The Meowdos were technically school property, but Shudo had put so much effort into making each one of them. How dare that idiot just break it like that? Izuku was completely set off. He said he was going to ground beta. He muttered to himself as he scanned over the cameras to confirm All Might's destination. "All right, all moron. Two can play this game." Izuku sent a signal to his body, initiating the HPSC, standing for Majima's Advanced Juvenile Emulation and Synthetic Technology with Integrated Capabilities. Izuku insisted on the name much to Majini's chagrin, and instructed his body to move to ground beta. For that, he might need to confront All Might again, so the power armor was probably the best choice. Inside the support lab 3 Delta, the HPSC unit powered on with a series of calibrated whirs and clicks before fully awakening and bolting towards ground beta. Higuri, who had entered looking for the soldering iron Shudo had borrowed earlier, narrowly avoided being run over by the robot wearing the heavy power armor that rushed out of the room without a word. While his body was en route, Izuku hurried to his dad's office and found Principal Nezu in the middle of a meeting with Shochan. Without hesitation, Izuku activated the projector in the room, capturing both teachers' attention. "Dad!" Izuku exclaimed, his frustration palpable. Izuku, what happened? Dad inquired, his large eyes fixed intently on Izuku. Weren't you supposed to be in Gym Gamma helping with the costume critique? But might happened. Izuku burst out, unable to contain his frustration as he began pacing around the room. That arrogant, narcissistic, glorified balloon. I'm afraid to find out what he did with that all-might Issy doll I sent him as a prank a few years ago. He might have actually used it. You sent him a what? Sho-chan choked, nearly spilling his coffee in disbelief. Not the point now, Shota-kun, Dad interjected firmly, though his voice carried a hint of amusement. Izuku, calm down. We've talked about this. I need a clear report on the situation, Mitos. Izuku took a deep breath, focusing on maintaining his composure. He knew that presenting the situation calmly was crucial if he wanted his dad to take immediate action. Sorry, Dad. You're right, Izuku began, his voice steadier now. All Might changed the lesson plan without authorization. Instead of the costume critique, he announced battle trials and physically removed me from the classroom when I tried to intervene. Dad frowned deeply, his fingers tapping away on the keyboard as he accessed the surveillance feeds. That's unacceptable, he growled, checking the camera feeds. I know, Izuku replied, his fists clenched in frustration. And he completely destroyed the Meow Dose unit I was controlling to do it. Dad pulled up the feed from ground beta just as the students began emerging from the locker room in their costumes. Izuku's scanners quickly identified numerous issues that needed immediate attention for the safety of the students. Meanwhile, All Might casually commented on the costumes, clearly favoring those with more flashy quirks while practically dismissing others. Izuku couldn't help but notice the disdainful glance directed at a few students. Then he started explaining the lesson, if it could even be called that. The lesson sounded more like a script for an action movie than an actual exercise. Dividing the class into duos for indoor fights seemed like a disaster waiting to happen. To exacerbate matters, All Might started assigning teams based on his own criteria, and that criterion was clear to everyone. All students with mutations, villainous, or simply less flashy quirks were placed on the villain team. This included Hitoshi, Hagakure, Shuji, Kuda, Tokoyami, Ashido, Azui, Minetta, Kirishima, and Ajur. The others were arbitrarily placed on the hero team, causing discomfort evident in their expressions. Dad's fur bristled slightly, a sign of his growing displeasure. This behavior from All Might is more than enough grounds for his second strike. I'm heading to ground beta, Sho-chan declared, already rising from his seat with determination. Izuku nodded eagerly. Please. I've sent the HPSC unit, but I can't handle All Might alone. What's the ETA? Sho-chan asked, his tone serious. 30 seconds, Izuku replied promptly. As the first team, Minetta and Azui as villains versus Uraraka and Yaoyorozu as heroes, prepared to start the exercise, Izuku couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. He noticed the expression on Minetta's face, and he knew something would go wrong. I'm transferring, Izuku declared with a growl. I'll try to talk All Might down, but we all know this won't work. I'll be there in 2 minutes, Sho-chan affirmed and bolted out of the room. If something happens, you have my permission to stop the class, Netsu instructed Izuku firmly. Now go. Thank you, Dad. Izuku nodded gratefully before closing his eyes and relinquishing control of the projection. Then, he began the transfer process, redirecting his consciousness. As the HPSC unit calibrated its systems, Izuku linked his mind back to his physical form, seamlessly integrating with the armor's processors. In mere seconds, he could feel the weight of the armor on his synthetic skin. After ensuring everything was functioning correctly, Izuku opened his eyes and took a few test steps. The transition from digital to physical was always a bit disorienting, but Izuku quickly adjusted. He clenched his hands, relishing the sensation of touch once more. The orange armor fit snugly on his body. Majini had done a perfect job ensuring Izuku wouldn't be overwhelmed by sensory input. When Izuku opened his eyes, he found himself facing the towering doors of Ground Beta's simulated cityscape. He checked the knuckle blasters on his back, just to make sure they were there. Taking a deep breath, Izuku stepped in, going straight to the monitor room where he knew All Might and the students would be. He arrived just as All Might was bellowing, "The heroes can enter the building." The booming voice echoed through the space, and once more, several of the students winced at the volume. Izuku's expression hardened as he marched purposefully toward the hero. "All Might!" Izuku growled, his voice laced with frustration. Every eye in the room turned toward him, the students' gazes widening as they took in the sight. For those who had never seen Mitos in this form, they had no inkling that the figure before them was the same one that was driving the cat All Might had just destroyed moments ago. Clad in heavy orange armor with a horned helmet, Izuku clearly meant business, but they had no idea who he was. Whispers rippled through the room as the students speculated whether he was an upperclassman or perhaps a new hero they hadn't yet heard of. "What do you want, machine?" All Might retorted, his expression darkening as he turned to face Izuku. Nedzu crafted the lesson plan carefully, simple enough for even a toddler to follow. Izuku began sharply. "And you completely disregarded it. Are you an idiot?" "That's no way to address me, machine." All Might replied forcefully. "I am the heroics teacher. I can teach my class however I see fit. Not when the lesson poses potential risks to their lives." Izuku shot back, his voice firm and resolute. "Indoor battles? Less than half of this class has any formal training, and I can easily think of at least 6 individuals here who could unintentionally bring down an entire building." All Might's expression hardened further, but before he could respond, a scream was heard and everyone turned to see Ashido pointing to the screens with a look of horror on her face. As Izuku shifted his gaze to the screens, his eyes widened in fury. Minetta had not only ensnared Yaoyorozu and Uraraka with his quirk but had also trapped his own partner. Worse yet, he was shamelessly jerking Yaoyorozu, who struggled desperately to free herself. "Minetta, what are you doing?" Izuku yelled, invading the comms. "I'm acting like a villain," Minetta said, his voice making clear he was drolling. Izuku turned to All Might, who, despite the clearly SXL assault happening right in front of his eyes, didn't stop the exercise. "All Might, stop this right now." Izuku growled, his voice laced with fury and disbelief. All Might's gaze shifted to Izuku, and for a moment, a flicker of irritation passed over his features. "This is a battle trial," he retorted, his voice stern. "It's meant to test their abilities in combat scenarios. That's not combat, that's assault." Izuku shot back, his voice rising with indignation. "You can't just stand there and let this happen. Step back, machine. You already disturbed my class enough." All Might said, taking a threatening step ahead. "Enough." A commanding voice interrupted, drawing everyone's attention. Sho-chan strode into the room, his eyes quickly scanning the monitors to assess the situation. "Mitos, go fetch Minetta and bring him to Nedzu's office." Izuku nodded, wasting no time in obeying the order. "All Might, you and I will have a long conversation. The rest of the class is dismissed," Sho-chan declared firmly. Despite his words, no one dared to move. All eyes remained glued to the monitors, where Minetta was about to assault Uraraka next. However, before he could do anything, a loud bang echoed through the room, accompanied by a cloud of dust. Izuku burst in, smoke trailing from his knuckle blaster, his presence commanding. "Minetta! You're coming with me!" Izuku growled, his voice laced with authority as he seized Minetta by the collar of his costume with one hand, the knuckle blaster still smoking in his other. Minetta could only nod, his bravado fading under the intense glare of Izuku's toxic green eyes, which seemed to flicker with a hint of red every few seconds. Izuku gritted his teeth, ignoring Minetta's desperate pleas and excuses as he marched the disgraced student toward Nedzu's office. Each whimper grated on his nerves, amplifying his frustration with every step. "Please, I didn't mean it. I was just joking," Minetta pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. "Joking? You think that's funny?" Izuku snapped back, his grip tightening on Minetta's collar. "What you did was completely unacceptable. Honestly, whatever punishment Nedzu had in store for Minetta wouldn't compare to the wrath of the Yaoyorosis once they learned of their daughter's ordeal." Expulsion from UA might be the least of Minetta's worries. As they reached the principal's office, Izuku swung the door open and shoved Minetta inside. "Get in there," he commanded sharply, his tone brooking no argument. Minetta stumbled forward, visibly shaken as he glanced around the office. Nezu sat behind his desk, his expression grave. The principal's beady eyes fixed on Minetta with a stern intensity, while Izuku could sense his father's seething anger from across the room. "What were you thinking?" Nezu's voice cut through the tension, skipping any formality. "It's not my fault. I was just doing what All Might told us to do. He said I was supposed to act like a villain." Minetta blurted out, desperation creeping into his voice. "Have you ever heard the phrase, too far?" Nezu retorted sharply. "What you just did wasn't just abhorrent. It was a crime, Minetta. UA has a zero-tolerance policy on bullying and SXL assault. Your behavior today not only justifies expulsion but could lead to legal action from the Yaoyorosis." "You can't expel me," Minetta protested, his voice rising in panic. Your father's position on the school board won't protect you this time," Nezu interjected firmly. "You are hereby expelled from UA, Minetta Minoru. Gather your things and leave the school. Security will escort you out." Minetta's protests dissolved into tears as reality set in. He lamented about fairness and his father's influence, but Izuku paid little heed as he escorted Minetta out to gather his belongings. This student was delusional if he believed his father could save him now. If anything, this incident might spell trouble for Minetta's father on the school board. Good riddance. The elder Minetta had been a thorn in Nezu's side for too long, being one of the most vocal members on his discriminatory views and constantly hindering progress on changing the entrance exam and other reforms at UA. By the time Izuku got Minetta out of the school, he was ready to murder someone. 01010000011111010101110. One pest was gone, time to deal with another one. Nezu watched with a mixture of resignation and irritation as Shoyuta dragged a protesting All Might into his office. The hero kicked and yelled, futilely trying to break free from Shuta's grip. It was a scene that had played out far too many times. All Might's stubbornness and disregard for rules were becoming painfully predictable. "Let me go, Eraserhead. You can't treat me like this. I'm the #1 hero." Yagi screamed, thrashing against Shuta's hold. "This isn't a game, Yagi," Shoyuta growled, his tone firm. "You're acting more like a child than my students." "You can let him go, Shuta-kun," Nezu interjected, leveling a sharp glare at the disgraced hero. "Now, Yagi, if you're finished throwing a tantrum, we need to discuss the consequences of your actions today." "There's nothing to discuss," Yagi retorted, crossing his arms defiantly as Shoyuta released him. "I did nothing wrong." Nezu turned to his screen, his expression hardening as he reviewed the footage. "Let's see, shall we? First, you disregarded a carefully laid lesson plan that I set specifically for you. You had no authority to change it, and in doing so, you put all of your students at risk by placing them in a situation they weren't prepared to handle." Yagi's confident facade faltered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. It was a necessary test of their abilities. A proper hero needs to dash. They aren't heroes yet. Shoyuta cut him off sharply. This lesson was far too advanced for them. Less than half of the students had any previous training. They don't know the limits of their quirks or how to control them in combat situations. This could have ended with someone seriously injured or worse. Yagi's expression darkened as he glared at Shoyuta. "I don't need a mere underground hero," he spat the word venomously, "telling me how I should teach my class, Eraserhead." "Enough, Yagi." Nezu intervened before Shoyuta could reply. "Indoor battles with inadequate training and supervision? That's not teaching, that's endangerment. And then there's the matter of your conduct during the exercise." All Might's expression turned defensive. "I was overseeing the exercise as a hero would. You stood by while one of your students committed SXL assault." Nezu cut in, his tone ice cold. "You failed to intervene, to stop the situation, or to protect the victims. That is inexcusable. Nothing happened. No one got hurt. Yagi insisted defensively. Physically, maybe. But that doesn't change the fact that you stood by and refused to act when one of your students was being assaulted, Nezu growled. And then there's the matter of you destroying a Meowdos unit. That stupid robot shouldn't have stood in my way. Yagi yelled. That stupid robot is the head of UA's security and was well within his rights to question your actions when you deviated from the lesson plan you were supposed to follow, Nezu replied sharply. And the robot you destroyed cost over 10 million yen to build. You caused irreparable damage. It's just a machine, Yagi retorted dismissively. Nezu's eyes narrowed, his patience wearing thin. I have more than enough reasons to fire you, Yagi. You can't do that. I'm the #1 hero. Yagi growled. I can destroy this school. Who do you think the public will side with? The symbol of peace? Or a rat? I can't deny your status as the symbol of peace, all might, Nezu said evenly, his voice carrying a hint of steel. But even symbols must adhere to the rules, especially when it comes to the safety and well-being of our students. All Might scoffed, his frustration simmering beneath the surface. You're making a mistake, Nezu. I've saved countless lives. And today, you put them at risk, Nezu interrupted, his tone unwavering. You disregarded protocols, endangered our students, and failed in your duty to uphold the standards of heroism that UA stands for. All Might's fists clenched, his expression darkening. You wouldn't dare. Unfortunately, I know the HPSC will argue that this is only your second offense, Nezu sighed. So you won't be fired yet. However, you are being demoted to a teaching assistant. You will no longer have supervisory duties, and you must be accompanied by another staff member when interacting with students. If I receive a single more complaint about you, you'll find yourself out of this school faster than you can say, symbol of peace. Are we clear? Yagi looked at him smugly, no doubt thinking he had won the argument by avoiding being fired. Crystal, he said defiantly before turning and leaving the room, not waiting for Nezu to dismiss him. As Yagi slammed the door behind him, Nezu let out a long, frustrated sigh. The tension in the room lingered like a heavy fog, and he rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. Shoyuta leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He'll mess up before the end of the week. I'm counting on that, Nezu replied, his voice tinged with resignation. He thinks he's untouchable. Just let him live in that delusion a little longer. If he tries anything, I won't hesitate to break his nose, Shoyuta growled, his eyes narrowing. You'll have to get in line, Nezu joked, shaking his head. For now, let's focus on making sure the students are all right. Just then, the projectors on the wall activated. Minetta is out, Izuku announced as he entered the room. He's crying at the gates and calling his father. I have no doubt Minetta-san will try to argue on his son's behalf, but he's done, Nezu said darkly. By the end of the week, this school will be completely rid of all Minettas. Good, Izuku nodded. Now, on another matter. I'll be unavailable tomorrow. Is the update ready? Nezu asked, his ears twitching with interest. Yeah. Majini sent me a message a few minutes ago, Izuku replied. But I'll have to shut down almost all the security to install the updates. I'll warn the teachers at our next meeting so they can be prepared, Nezu nodded. When are you planning to update? Izuku took a moment to gather his thoughts. I'll start the update early in the morning. I need to take care of a few things beforehand. If everything goes smoothly, I should be done a bit after lunch PRD. Nezu nodded, concern etching his features. Make sure to monitor the system closely. We can't afford any hiccups, especially with everything going on. Don't rush it. If you need more time, the teachers can handle security. Of course, Izuku assured him. I'll run diagnostics before and after the update to ensure everything is stable. Good, Nezu replied, giving a small nod. Keep me updated if anything unexpected comes up. I will, Izuku said with a smile. I'll go take care of the final adjustments before the update. With that, the projectors turned off, and Izuku disappeared from view. I'm leaving too, Shoyuta said as he turned around. I have to go over the new schedule now that All Might has been demoted. Nedzu nodded and watched as Shoyuta left the room. For now, he would be putting Izuku as the new heroics teacher in All Might's place. He had the necessary knowledge, and since he was formally considered Nedzu's support item, it would be basically the same as Nedzu putting himself as the teacher for now. 010100000111111101010. After the absolute clusterfuck that was the first heroics lesson, the students went home with a mix of emotions. Some were disappointed, others angry, but the general consensus was the same. Everyone understood now the old saying, "Never meet your heroes." Katsuki slammed his door shut and threw himself onto his bed, seething with a sense of utter betrayal. All Might was supposed to be the #1 hero, the symbol of peace, the ultimate role model. Katsuki had spent so many years idolizing the man. Was that really the kind of person he was? Feeling his anger boiling over, Katsuki jumped up and started ripping the posters off his walls. The once comforting smile of All Might now seemed to mock him. He then turned to his collection of action figures, throwing each one to the floor without caring how expensive some of them were. The only one left was the action figure on Izuku's altar, the one he had recovered from the nerd's bedroom after he died. It was the last memory of his old friend, or so Katsuki thought. With a frown, Katsuki sat back down on his bed and pulled out his phone. He unlocked it and scrolled through his apps list, his finger hovering over the Mitos app, represented by a chibi version of Izuku as the icon. After hesitating for a few seconds, Katsuki opened it. There were several options, but for now, Katsuki ignored everything and went straight to the chat option. "I'll feel very crazy if I'm wrong on this one," Katsuki started typing. "But it makes sense when I think about it. You said you would have a mental quirk, and at the time I didn't pay much mind, but mental quirks are much more powerful than people give credit for. The day you died, you were going somewhere with Auntie Inko. You were close to the quirk registration building, so I have to assume your quirk had finally manifested. I know it's a stretch, but I don't believe even Nedzu would be disrespectful enough to turn your image into an AI. Then we have another thing. You called me Kaken. Twice. The first time I thought I was hearing things, but the second time, everyone heard it." He roughly rubbed his face. "So, please. I think I'm going crazy, but if there's one person who could somehow be stubborn enough to come back from the dead, it would be you." He glanced down at his screen. "You're not really an AI, are you? You're Izuku." Katsuki's heart pounded as he hit send, his eyes glued to the screen, waiting for a response that could change everything. The seconds dragged on like hours, each passing moment amplifying his anxiety. Just as Katsuki thought he wouldn't get an answer, his phone started ringing a video call. His breath hitched. With trembling hands, he accepted the call, and the screen filled with the familiar face of Mitos. It was as if Izuku hadn't aged a day. The same chubby cheeks. The same big, round eyes that could flood a room with warmth. The same smile Katsuki always dreamed of seeing again. "Hey, Kaken," Izuku waved at the screen. "It's been some time." "It's really you?" Katsuki asked softly, disbelief etched on his face. "Yeah, you're right. I'm not an AI." "Not really," Izuku nodded. "If you need proof, let me think." "Oh." He snapped his fingers. "Remember a few days after you got your quirk? You tried to use your explosions to fly. You insisted you just needed some height, so you climbed a tree and jumped down. You ended up with a broken leg. I used a pink pen to sign your cast. You were livid." Katsuki's eyes widened, a mix of shock and nostalgia flooding him. "You remember that?" he whispered, tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "I remember absolutely everything," Izuku replied with a smirk, but his expression softened. "Though I had to dive into my memory files since I locked a lot of them. You'd be surprised by how much I locked away in the trauma folder." Katsuki felt a pang in his chest at that confession. "I didn't help with that, did I?" he asked softly. Izuku sighed, his smile fading slightly. "I won't lie, Kaken. I locked away every memory from before my death that didn't involve mommy. Remembering hurt too much." Katsuki's throat tightened at those words, memories of their childhood flashing vividly in his mind the days before he turned on Izuku over something so stupid. "I'm sorry," Katsuki said softly. "For betraying you. For being such a jerk. For ruining our friendship. For never protecting you. For being the reason everyone thought you were quirkless. I'm sorry for everything, Izuku. You never deserved any of that." Izuku's expression softened, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Kakane," he started, but Katsuki cut him off. "No, just let me say this. I thought I was strong, but I was weak. I pushed you away when you saw me as your brother. I didn't realize how much you needed support." Katsuki took a shaky breath. "If I could go back and change things, I would. I want to be better. For you." A tense silence hung between them until Katsuki's eyes widened as he saw Izuku's eyes welling with tears. Katsuki felt himself panicking. He didn't want to make Izuku cry again. "I'm sorry, Izuku." "No!" Izuku interrupted, his voice warm. "Those are happy tears. I'm so happy to hear that. You've changed so much, Kaken. I'm so proud right now. I missed you so much. All this time, even when I couldn't remember you. I always knew I wanted my brother back." Katsuki felt a swell of emotions rise within him: relief, joy, and an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. It was all so confusing. Even after all the therapy he had gone through, he still struggled with feelings. But he knew he missed Izuku deeply. "You have no idea how much I've missed you too, Izuku. I thought I lost you forever," Katsuki said softly. "I've been trying so hard to be better, to become the hero you always believed I could be. I went to therapy. Things are a lot better with the hag. We can even have a full conversation without yelling at each other now." He added with a small chuckle. "I missed Uncle and Auntie too," Izuku replied, his smile brightening. "They miss you as well," Katsuki said. "Your altar used to be in the living room, next to your mom's. But the hag couldn't handle seeing them together without crying. So, I moved your altar to my room. She still visits at least once a month to talk to you. I want to see her again." Izuku's voice was soft as he looked at Katsuki nervously. "But I don't think now is a good time to reveal myself. I'm sorry for asking this, but could you keep me a secret for a little longer?" Katsuki nodded firmly. "Yeah, I can keep your secret. You know I'd do anything for you. The hag doesn't need to know anything yet." "Thanks, Kaken," Izuku said gratefully, a sense of relief evident on his face. "I just need a little more time before I can go back to the living world. Or rather, as living as I can be, considering my body is dead and buried." Katsuki winced at that reminder. Izuku's body was likely nothing but bones by now. "Can you tell me what happened?" Katsuki asked, steeling himself. "That day, The news coverage made no sense. The villain that attacked didn't have the power to cause that much collateral damage." Izuku's expression darkened, and Katsuki thought he saw his eyes flicker red for a moment. "Buckle up, Kaken. The story is not pleasant." Then Izuku launched into a detailed account of the day he died, which soon unraveled into everything he had been through in the last 7 years. Katsuki was nearly stunned to learn that Izuku was the hero crusher, but as he listened, it all began to make sense. Knowing his supposedly dead friend was capable enough to single-handedly end Endeavor's career was both amazing and frightening. Learning that Izuku had been adopted by Netsu himself was equally astonishing. If Katsuki harbored any lingering anger toward All Might before, it turned into outright contempt after hearing how the hero's actions had led to Izuku's and Auntie Inko's deaths. That man was no hero in Katsuki's eyes. He was nothing but a fraud. After Izuku finished his story, Katsuki shared what he had been up to in recent years, though his life paled in comparison to Izuku's adventures. Their conversation continued for hours, spanning topics both profound and mundane. Katsuki felt like they were kids again, having a sleepover in each other's homes. By the time Izuku ended the call, it was well past midnight, hours later than Katsuki's usual bedtime. Yet he didn't regret staying up. It felt like he was finally making up for all the lost years. As soon as his head hit the pillow, Katsuki drifted into sleep. That night, he dreamt of Izuku again, but this time, it felt different. He saw Dream Izuku waving at him, a broad smile on his face. You'll be the best hero, Kaken, Izuku said with a grin before turning away. I know you will. Then he walked off, disappearing into the air. Katsuki knew this was a goodbye. That was the last time Katsuki saw Dream Izuku. He was finally ready to move on. As the students arrived at school the next day, they were met with chaos. A horde of reporters had swarmed the gates, cameras flashing, and microphones moved forward as they bombarded anyone trying to pass through the crowd. The reporters shouted over one another, desperate for a statement. How does it feel to have All Might as a teacher? One reporter asked, practically shoving a microphone into a student's face. Katsuki's irritation spiked as he pushed through the mob, trying to ignore the barrage of questions. But before he could slip by, one of them grabbed his arm and shoved a microphone directly in his face. How do you feel about All Might's performance as a teacher? The reporter demanded. Katsuki's eyes narrowed, his temper barely held in check. He yanked his arm free, his expression a mix of anger and disdain. Get that out of my face, he snarled, shoving the microphone away. If you want to keep your equipment, don't shove it at me. He really wanted to give them a piece of his mind, maybe tell them just how much of a shitty teacher All Might was, but he knew that was a bad idea. Like it or not, bad-mouthing All Might was basically social suicide. Katsuki's career would be over before it even started. Still, as he tried to move past, more of the relentless press continued to hound him, their questions growing more insistent. Katsuki was on the verge of flipping someone off when a sudden silence fell over the crowd, followed by a surge of pressure that made the air feel heavy. Turning around, Katsuki saw the press surrounding Ponytail, her expression one of pure, unadulterated fury that would put even the hag during Monopoly night to shame. Out of my way. Those simple 4 words, spoken with icy authority, had the entire press parting like the Red Sea as Ponytail walked into the school. Katsuki, along with several other students, quickly seized the opportunity to slip inside as well. Katsuki already knew that Ponytail was a FING badass, but after what happened yesterday, it seemed like she was in a no bullshit mood. Katsuki could definitely respect that. Shaking his head, Katsuki made his way to the classroom. The last thing he needed was to give Hobo-sensei a reason to expel him by being late to class. When he arrived, several of his classmates were already there, venting about the shitty press and how they'd been harassed trying to get into the school. Katsuki tuned them out as he plopped down at his desk and pulled out his phone. He'd deny it to his dying day, but a soft smile spread across his face when he saw the text he'd received a few minutes ago. Izabot, good luck, Kaken. You can do it, you. Katsuki really missed the nerd. 010100000111110101010. Amidst the press frenzy, a young man with pale blue hair stood at the UA gates, quietly observing the scene with a mix of curiosity and amusement. He watched as reporters attempted to breach the school's defenses, only to be thwarted by the active UA shield. Their defense stat is way too high to just walk through. Plus, the sentries are on full alert. Man, this level's really unfair, he muttered to himself, eyeing the unyielding barrier. His phone buzzed, and he pulled it out, holding it with a firm grip as he answered the call. We're gonna need a debuff for this, he said, grinning while still focusing on the gate. Mitos is down for maintenance. A distorted voice crackled through the phone. You've got about 4 hours. Security will be minimal. Minimal, but not non-existent. Got it, he replied, his grin widening as he eyed the press with a mischievous look. I'll need a solid distraction. Do what you need, but watch out for the cats, his contact warned. I'll disable the cameras in the lounge, but I can only grant you a 5-minute window before Nedzu starts getting suspicious. Ah, so a quest with time limit, the young man chuckled. This level's really giving me a run for my money. But I guess that's expected from a high-level dungeon like this. He added, I'll ping you when I'm ready to start the quest. With that he ended the call. Returning his gaze to the press still clamoring for information about All Might, he shook his head in amusement. Bunch of vultures. Almost worse than the heroes. Almost. But they'd serve as a perfect distraction for his side quest. After that he'd get back to the main quest. There was a boss fight waiting after all. 0101000001001111101011010. Shudo sat at his desk, the remnants of yesterday's chaos still weighing heavily on his shoulders. He had always known the Meowdos units as more than just machines. They were the result of countless hours of meticulous work and care. Watching one get destroyed so carelessly had struck a chord deep within him. Maybe it was the emotional investment he had in each unit, or perhaps it was the fact that Meowdos was so much more sentient than most people thought. Seeing Meowdos being destroyed while Izuku was there, it almost felt like watching his friend die. Either way, the event left Shudo feeling very unsettled. The debacle during the class only deepened his discontent. The shambles left in All Might's wake did little to improve Shudo's already bleak view of the #1 hero. On top of that, the absence of Minetta provided a small sliver of relief. Minetta's behavior had always made Shudo uncomfortable, and it was clear from the girls' reactions that they, too, were glad to see him go. Lost in thought, Shudo noticed Shinso glancing at him from across the room. After a quick check to ensure no one was watching, Shudo discreetly raised his hands, signaling in their secret sign language. "I didn't see Catbot today," Shinso signed, his brow furrowed. "Maintenance and system update," Shudo responded. "The students aren't supposed to know, so keep it quiet, okay?" Shinso's smirk grew wider. "Nope. I'm telling all my friends." He turned around, then faced Shudo once more. "Hey, Peppermint. Fancy seeing you here. Did you know Catbot is in maintenance?" Shudo couldn't help but chuckle at Shinso's remark. "You need more friends," he signed back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I have more than enough friends," Shinso replied with a smirk. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden opening of the door. Uncle Shoyuta walked in, instantly commanding the room's attention. The class fell silent, eyes fixed forward as they awaited his announcement. "Good, you're learning," Uncle Shoyuta said, nodding approvingly at their immediate silence. "As you've all noticed, Minetta is no longer part of this class. He's been expelled from UA and received a black mark on his record. Let this serve as a clear warning. SXL harassment of any kind will not be tolerated at this school." Ida shot his hand up. "Sensei, what about All Might?" Uncle Shuda's face contorted into a look of distaste, as if he had just bitten into a sour lemon. "All Might has been demoted to a teaching assistant, and he's not allowed to interact with any students alone from now on." He raised a hand, silencing the murmur of discontent that began to ripple through the room. "While we would have preferred to have him fired for his actions, our hands are currently tied. However, be assured that if there is one more incident, he will be removed from UA entirely." Several murmurs rippled through the room as Uncle Shuda's words settled in, but he wasn't done yet. "I'd like to remind everyone," Uncle Shoyuta continued, his voice calm and authoritative, "that Hound Dog is our school's guidance counselor, and his door is always open if anyone needs to talk. Mental health is a crucial aspect of heroics. You can't expect to help others effectively if you don't take care of yourselves first." "Yes, Sensei." The class echoed as one. Uncle Shuda's gaze swept across the room, ensuring he had everyone's full attention. He gave a slight nod of approval before moving on. "Good. Now, back to our regular schedule. Today, we'll be focusing on something that will be very important for your lives over the next 3 years." The room immediately fell into a tense silence. The anticipation was palpable, with students leaning forward in their chairs, trying to guess what was coming next. Shudo could hear a few muttered prayers and anxious whispers of, "Please, not another pop quiz. Not another pop quiz." Uncle Shoyuta allowed the suspense to build for a moment longer before finally revealing the news. "It's time to choose your class president." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room, quickly followed by a burst of excited chatter. The atmosphere shifted instantly as half the class began nominating themselves, eager for the chance to take on the leadership role. The noise continued to rise until Ida, always the voice of reason, called for order and suggested holding a vote. Shudo leaned back in his chair, relieved that the responsibility wouldn't fall on him. He knew who he wanted to vote for, someone capable and reliable. By the time lunch PRD rolled around, the votes were counted, and Yaoyorozu had been chosen as class president, with Ida serving as vice president. The decision seemed to satisfy most of the class, and the atmosphere was noticeably lighter as everyone headed to the cafeteria. 010100000111110101110. Izuku hated maintenance with all his being. It was always a disorienting ordeal, a creeping sensation he couldn't quite put into words. It was like having someone open his head and write directly into his brain with a pen. He could feel his source code being altered in real time. The process wasn't painful, but it was deeply unsettling, an invasive, uncomfortable feeling that left him feeling exposed and vulnerable. Despite how many times he went through it, the sensation of his core being altered and recalibrated never got any easier. The worst part was the shutdown. During maintenance, he had to disable everything except the most basic functions. It felt like those early moments when Izuku first woke up inside a random person's cell phone, unable to perceive the world around him. He felt blind, deaf, and utterly isolated, trapped in a digital void surrounded by an endless sea of zeros and ones. To cope, Izuku would put himself into a semi-conscious state to make the time pass faster. It was like floating in that half-asleep state, where reality felt abstract and hard to pin down. He drifted as the updates integrated with his code, a sensation so elusive it was nearly impossible to explain to anyone who hadn't experienced it themselves. Despite being in this disembodied state, Izuku remained connected to UA's security system. So even though he couldn't perceive the world around him, he felt the moment the UA barrier crumbled, an event that occurred far too quickly to be anything other than a quirk in action. The barrier was designed to withstand even All Might's punches. The sudden, rapid collapse of it was deeply concerning. Izuku wanted to contact Netsu immediately to understand what was happening, but there was still about 1 hour left before the update was finished. Stopping now wasn't an option. He had to trust that Netsu and the staff could handle the situation. Too worried about the barrier breach, Izuku didn't notice when someone else logged into UA's security system using a staff password. He was unaware as the security cameras in the teacher's lounge were deactivated for about 5 minutes, and the logs were deleted before the intruder logged off. He wouldn't realize anything wrong happened until a few days later, after this security breach almost ended up in disaster. 0101000111110101110. Hate is a powerful word, and one that Shoyuta uses sparingly. But there are a few things that he truly despises. He hates villains who prey on defenseless children, the systemic corruption that festers within the ranks, and he loathes All Might and everything the man represents. But above all, Shoyuta harbors a deep, unrelenting hatred for the press. The press are nothing but FANG vultures. They act as though they are entitled to everything, without regard for the people they trample on in their quest for a scoop. They have no qualms about harassing kids or exploiting grieving families for their own gain. Their self-serving attitudes and indignation when confronted are infuriating. They care for nothing but their own agendas and will turn hostile when their demands are not met. Thankfully, Shoyuta doesn't have to deal with the press, often due to being underground. But when he does, it takes immense self-control to resist the urge to throw a punch. Right now, he's really pondering whether the satisfaction of breaking one of those vultures' disgusting beaks would be worth the inevitable fallout. What possessed the press to storm UA like this? Did they genuinely believe they could force their way in and get what they wanted after already being denied? How did they even breach the barrier? In his 10 years at UA, Shoyuta had never seen anything even scratch the barrier, let alone destroy it like that. It seemed almost too coincidental that this happened while Mitos was offline. Was it just bad Murphy's Law, or was there something else at play? Unfortunately, Shoyuta had no time to ponder the implications. He was too busy physically restraining the press from storming into the school and harassing students who should have been enjoying their lunch. The alarm was likely causing panic among the students, especially the first years who had yet to undergo any training drills. Shoyuta could only hope that they were managing to stay calm. Since they're trespassing, they're technically villains, Zashi muttered, leaning closer to Shoyuta. Can't we just fight them? If you're eager for your reputation to be dragged through the mud, be my guest, Shoyuta replied, his tone dry and unamused. Nedzu's already called the police. They should be here soon. Zashi's face twisted with frustration, but he didn't push the issue any further. He cast a scowl at the press, who were behaving like toddlers throwing tantrums because they couldn't get a cookie before dinner. How the hell were the hormonal teenagers in Shuta's class more mature than these so-called adults? The reporters continued their relentless shouting, demanding, "Give us all might." Their voices were like a scratched record, repeating the same chant over and over. Shoyuta didn't even attempt to reason with them anymore. He just focused on restraining the crowd until the wail of sirens filled the air. The blare of sirens grew louder, gradually drowning out the press's shouting. Police vehicles arrived on the scene, and officers quickly began herding the reporters back, pushing them away from the gates. Some stubborn individuals tried to force their way past, but they were swiftly restrained and redirected. Good riddance to the lot of them. Shoyuta shook his head and turned back inside. Unfortunately, the commotion had consumed the remainder of the lunch party. He had no choice but to return to his class, where he discovered that about half of his students were missing. Given the chaos and the probable need for many to see Recovery Girl after the panic, Shoyuta would make an exception for lateness just this time. He knew he wouldn't feel an ounce of guilt when Nedzu hit those vultures with lawsuits. As he waited for the rest of the class to return, Shoyuta listened to Ida and Yaoyorozu recount how they managed to calm the chaos in the cafeteria. Yaoyorozu had created a makeshift megaphone, which Ida used after Uraraka floated him to the ceiling to announce that it was just the press. Efficient and logical, just the way Shoyuta liked it. The potential in this class kept growing. 010100000111110101010. The sound of a phone ringing echoed through the empty bar, slicing through the quiet like a knife. The young man with pale blue hair glanced at the glowing screen before picking it up. He held the phone with 4 fingers, bringing it to his ear. "What part of 'watch out for the cats' didn't you understand?" snapped the voice on the other end, sharp with irritation. "I did avoid the cats," the blue-haired man replied, his tone equally low and irritated. "What you forgot to inform me was that there was also a dog." His voice dropped to a growl, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. "The DMN thing wouldn't stop barking at me. I had to deal with it." A tense silence followed on the other end of the line. Finally, the voice spoke again, more measured but still laced with tension. "What do you mean by, deal with it?" The blue-haired man leaned back in his seat, his eyes narrowing as he stared into the dimly lit space before him. His grip on the phone tightened slightly. "I mean exactly what you think," he replied, his voice cold and unyielding. "The dog won't be a problem anymore." "You destroyed it? You idiot!" the voice on the other side yelled, frustration boiling over. "It was just a dumb robot," the blue-haired man grumbled. "What's the big deal? DMN it. The other things could be explained, but there's no way Nedzu won't notice the bark dose is gone." The voice was practically seething. "Why the hell did Sensei send you instead of just asking me to get it?" "Sensei said I need to level up," the blue-haired man replied simply, shrugging off the concern. "I don't see why you're so angry. I got the schedule. It's not like I'll need to get into UA again. It's not your neck that is in the line if Nedzu finds out what happened." The voice on the other end of the line was furious. "For F's sake. I can't deal with you. You better make sure the plan works. I've risked too much for it to be for nothing." The call ended with a sharp click, leaving the blue-haired man alone in the dimly lit bar. He grumpily pocketed his phone, muttering under his breath. "Stupid NPC. If they weren't so useful, I'd have dusted them already," he grumbled, irritation clear in his voice. "At least we got what we needed," the bartender, a man with a body made of black mist, remarked as he casually cleaned a glass. "That means the plan can proceed as we wanted, Tamura." Yeah, Tamura muttered, his eyes drifting to the corner of the bar. "As long as this summon is as good as the doctor believes, everything will go according to plan." In the dim corner of the bar, a hulking creature with purple skin and an exposed brain lay still, its eyes vacant and lifeless as it stared at nothing. "All Might's days are numbered," Tamura said with a dark grin. 01010000011111110101010. Nedzu stared intently at his screen, his beady eyes rapidly scanning the footage of the crumbled UA barrier displayed from multiple angles. The damage was unmistakable. This was the work of a quirk, but not just any quirk. The extent and nature of the destruction pointed to something akin to disintegration or extreme dehydration. But there was a glaring problem. None of the reporters present, or even the ones who weren't, had a quirk remotely capable of this level of devastation. Even with Trigger, no one in the press would have had the power to bring down UA's defenses like this. Whoever was responsible for destroying the barrier wasn't part of the press. But the question remained, why? Why would someone go to such lengths to let the press into UA? Was it merely a distraction? And if so, what were they trying to divert attention from? The sound of a ping interrupted Nedzu's thoughts, drawing his gaze to the projection that had just appeared before him. Izuku stood there with a pensive expression on his face, his brow furrowed in concentration. I just went through the entire quirk database, Izuku began, his voice tinged with concern. There's not a single registered quirk that could match this kind of damage. This is definitely the work of a villain, Dad. Nedzu nodded, his mind rapidly sifting through potential scenarios. Yes, it appears that way, he replied, his voice calm but tinged with underlying tension. Have you had any luck locating the Barkdos? Izuku's expression darkened slightly. No dice. It's completely offline. I think we can consider it as good as destroyed. He paused, his frown deepening. Shudo will be devastated. He put so much work into building it. Nedzu sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. It's a shame, he agreed, a note of regret in his voice. I'll make sure to cover all the costs if he wants to build a new one. But for now, I believe we should keep this incident under wraps, at least from anyone who isn't part of the staff. Izuku nodded, his expression serious. Yeah, we don't want to cause panic. All the new security measures are already in place. What about the defense protocols? Nedzu asked, his tone turning sharp as he refocused on the immediate issue. Protocol Toybox is fully online and ready for deployment, Izuku reported, his voice steady. Protocol Funtime still needs a few more tweaks, though. One of them is a little unstable. Nedzu's eyes narrowed slightly, his mind racing as he weighed the risks. We can't afford any instability in our defenses, not with the current threat level, he said, his voice firm. Focus on stabilizing Protocol Funtime. We need all systems operational and secure. I'll get to it right away, Izuku promised, his holographic form flickering slightly as he prepared to dive back into the systems. As Izuku's projection faded, Nedzu turned his attention back to the footage on the screen, his mind whirring with possibilities. Whoever was behind this attack was both powerful and cunning, and they had managed to slip through UA's defenses without leaving a trace. The implications were deeply troubling. Nedzu knew they were facing a dangerous enemy, one who had already demonstrated their willingness to go to extreme lengths to achieve their goals. To make things worse, the timing was too perfect. What were the chances that someone would try to enter UA exactly during the small window of time that Mitos was offline? The only ones who even knew about the maintenance were the staff, and maybe some immediate family. The chances were too remote for Nedzu to believe it was actually a coincidence. But the alternative was, Nedzu didn't want to doubt his staff. Other than All Might, he had paw-picked each one of them. However, the possibility wasn't something he could ignore. If there really was a mole in his school, Nedzu would find them, and he would make them regret betraying him. But that would have to come later. For now, Nedzu had to make sure his students were all safe. We'll be ready, Nedzu murmured to himself, his eyes narrowing with determination. Whatever comes next, we'll be ready. Everyone knew All Might would mess up again soon, but even Izuku was surprised by how quickly it happened. The buffoon clearly hadn't taken Nedzu's warning seriously at all. No, of course not. Why would he? All Might was above law and completely untouchable, wasn't he? Izuku monitored him through the city's CCTV, watching as the so-called #1 hero wasted his limited hero time on petty criminals. Worse yet, he had started interfering with arrests that other heroes already had under control, stealing the spotlight, And, of course, striking dramatic poses for the cameras at every opportunity. Not only was he wasting his own precious hero time, he made several heroes, many of them newbies barely scraping by, look incompetent. After all, if they couldn't even handle a simple purse snatcher without needing All Might's intervention, why were they even heroes? The press didn't care about what happened, they would throw anyone under the bus just for some extra views. The digital boy sighed as he timed every second All Might spent in his muscular form, his frustration growing as the timer passed the 2.5-hour mark. All Might was supposed to accompany Class 1A to the USJ today, but it was obvious to anyone paying attention that he'd burn out well before he made it to the school. The VNG great, Izuku thought, his annoyance seeping through his usually calm demeanor. Shaking his head, Izuku disconnected from the city's camera network. He had seen everything he needed. His dad, Nedzu, had no doubt seen the headlines by now, and Izuku was sure they'd reached the same conclusion. A notification pinged in the corner of his display. Camarade. Looks like All Might won't make it. Sunbut. Seems so. This might be a problem. Is there anyone who can sub for him? Camarade. Aizawa and Kuro's are more than enough to cover the class. Sunbut. Yes. Still. I'm worried about the breach yesterday. Izuku sighed as he allowed his digital form to materialize inside his dad's office. Nedzu was at his desk, furiously tapping away at his keyboard, the glow of his screen reflecting in his beady eyes. I get your worry, Izuku, Nedzu said without looking up. His paws continued flying across the keys of his adapted keyboard, his mind clearly working a mile a minute. All of our security measures are operating at 100%. I stand by my decision that Aizawa and Kuro's can handle the class. I know, Izuku replied, moving closer, his holographic expression creased with concern. I don't doubt their abilities. I have a bad feeling, you know? After the breach yesterday, I can't shake the sense that something bigger is on the horizon. Nedzu paused then, his small eyes finally lifting to meet Izuku's projected form. His voice softened, a rare tone of seriousness from the usually playful principal. A hero does well to trust their instincts, he said, tapping a clawed finger on the desk. For now, put MHSDIC in standby, and prepare Protocol Toybox to be deployed at a moment's notice. If anything happens, we'll respond immediately. Izuku nodded, his face set in determination. Understood. I'll make sure everything is ready. As his form flickered, fading back into data, Izuku couldn't shake the gnawing sense of dread that had settled deep within his code. Something was coming, and he feared they were running out of time to stop it. 0101000001110110101010110. Izuku wasn't the only one feeling tense. Inside the bus heading to the USJ, Shudo stared out the window, his mind swirling with unease. Today was supposed to be a good day, a special one even. He was going to the USJ for rescue training with his classmates, All Might, Uncle Shoyuda, and a secret third teacher. Shudo knew the third teacher was 13, but it was meant to be a surprise, so he kept quiet. The excitement of testing his new invention had kept him up the night before, anticipation buzzing in his veins. Yet, despite that, anxiety had also wormed its way into him. The break-in by the press yesterday had rattled everyone. Shudo had seen his dad looking unusually worried and distracted afterward, which was never a good sign. Though Shudo had tried to ask about it, both his dad and Izuku refused to tell him anything. The secrecy gnawed at him. He hated being kept in the dark. And then there was All Might. Everyone in Class 1A was on edge about their once-admired teacher. In just one day, All Might had managed to obliterate the image of the flawless hero many had held for so long. It wasn't just disappointing, it was eye-opening. Everyone now understood how the man wasn't even half of what the media painted him to be, and the disillusionment hit many far too hard. Shudo didn't have much, if any, respect for the number one hero to begin with, but watching his classmates lose their faith was harder than he expected. It felt cruel, as though they had been robbed of something they hadn't been ready to give up. Shudo's thoughts were interrupted by a small croaking noise. Turning his head, he saw Azui looking directly at him, her large eyes blinking slowly. "Say, Majima-kun," she said in her usual blunt tone, I tend to speak my mind. Are you Endeavor's son? Shudo stiffened, his muscles tightening like a coiled spring. It took every ounce of his self-control not to snap at her. Azui wasn't trying to be rude, just incredibly blunt, maybe a little too tactless. My dad is Majima Higuri, Shudo replied, his voice tight, gritting his teeth to keep his emotions in check. Endeavor may have been my sperm donor, but that man was no father. Azui nodded, her face unreadable. I see. Well, I'm glad he's in prison. He was a menace. Shudo blinked at her directness, surprised by how straightforward she was. A small snort escaped him before he nodded in agreement. Yeah, he was. Before he could say anything more, Kaminari's voice cut through the conversation. Are we talking about Endeavor? He asked, his usual boundless energy barely contained as he leaned over the seat. Because, boy, do I have stories about that dumpster fire. He once chased a villain near my house, just a purse snatcher, but Endeavor went after him like he was fighting some S-rank villain. Kaminari pouted dramatically, crossing his arms. He burned my bicycle, and then his agency refused to pay for the damages. You too. Siro chimed in from the seat behind Kaminari, shaking his head. Endeavor once chased some shoplifter. Around my neighborhood. He completely destroyed my mom's garden and my dad's car in the process. And the poor criminal ended up torched too. Oh, don't even get me started, Uraraka huffed, leaning forward. That BSTRD completely wrecked a construction site my parents were working on. We almost lost the client because his agency refused to cover the damages. For someone so rich, he sure was a cheapskate. He definitely was, Shudo said with a smirk, finally loosening up as the conversation took a lighter turn. It was strangely cathartic to badmouth Endeavor with his classmates. Maybe they didn't understand the full depth of his disdain for the man, but it felt good to share in the collective frustration. For sure, Shinso added from the back, his voice laced with amusement. Endeavor makes Bakugu look humble. Huh? Bakugu barked, his voice dripping with rage as he shot daggers at Shinso. What did you just say, Panda Man? Shinso blinked lazily, clearly unfazed by Bakugu's outburst. His lips curled into a smirk, enjoying how easily he had riled him up. You heard me, Shinso replied, leaning back in his seat with a calm, unbothered posture. We've only known you for 2 days, but it's obvious your personality's like a time bomb with the timer broken. You fucker. I'll kill you. Bakugu roared, leaping from his seat, ready to lunge at Shinso. But before he could make a move, Kirishima grabbed him by the shoulders, holding him back with ease. I rest my case, Shinso added with a shrug, turning his attention back to Shudo, who couldn't help but let a tiny smirk tug at his lips. Bakugu, though still fuming, struggled against Kirishima's grip for a moment before slumping back into his seat with a frustrated huff, muttering curses under his breath. Still, dude, Kaminari chimed in, turning back to Shudo. How long did you live with him? Shudo blinked at the sudden question. He hadn't expected to be brought back into the conversation so quickly. He shrugged nonchalantly. 9 or 10 years, he said. As soon as the Hero Crusher released that dossier on him, Endeavor got arrested. My dad started fostering me and my siblings right after. About a year later, he adopted us. 10 years living with Endeavor? Uraraka winced in sympathy, giving Shudo a gentle pat on the shoulder. My condolences, seriously. He was an even worse father than he was a hero, Shudo said, sighing. But, well, the Hero Crusher got him. Hero Crusher, huh? Kirishima muttered, his eyes distant as he thought back. The HPSC says they're a villain, but honestly, they were kinda manly, calling out all those heroes who were committing crimes. I wonder what happened to them. They just disappeared. Shudo tensed slightly at the mention of the Hero Crusher, but what caught his attention even more was the subtle stiffening of Bakugu. Their eyes met for a brief moment, a silent exchange passing between them. Did Bakugu know something? They would need to talk later. The Hero Crusher was amazing. Ashido chirped. They got so many bad heroes to quit just from fear of being exposed. Ashido! Ida stood up, chopping the air dramatically as he looked at her with disapproval. We shouldn't condone such actions. The hero crusher may have exposed criminals, but they were still a hacker and a criminal themselves. As heroes in training, we must uphold justice, not admire lawlessness. Chill out, glasses. Bakugo growled. It's not like any of us is interested in becoming a shitty hacker like him. Shinsu's eyebrow quirked up at Bakugo's slip. Him? How do you know it was a he? Shudo noticed Bakugo tense up again, but before anyone could zero in on the slip, Ashido quickly jumped into the conversation. Yeah. Who says the hero crusher couldn't be a badass woman? She said enthusiastically, diffusing the tension. Exactly. Kaminari joined in, laughing. Maybe they were some super genius girl with an axe to grind. I think it could have been anyone, Shudo added calmly, wanting to stir the conversation somewhere else. But his suspicions about Bakugo were growing. Did Bakugo actually know about Izuku? Izuku never mentioned that he knew Bakugo, though. The conversation shifted back to lighter topics, and the mood on the bus slowly relaxed. But Shudo's mind remained elsewhere. He glanced at Bakugo again, noting how his explosive classmate had gone uncharacteristically quiet. He'd have to talk to him later. Before he could reflect any further, Uncle Shoyuta called for silence. Shudo glanced out the window and saw the giant structure of the USJ looming ahead of them. Despite all of his years around UA, it was only the second time Shudo had been here. The first time was right when the place was built as a welcome gift for 13 after they were hired, but at the time, Shudo had barely paid any attention to the place. It had been just a few months since Endeavor was arrested, and Shudo still didn't trust the heroes. He was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. This time, however, Shudo had his mind on the game. He could worry about talking to Bakugo or figuring out what was worrying Izuku and his dad afterwards. As they gathered at the entrance, 13 introduced themselves and gave them all a speech about how potentially dangerous their quirks were and how they were there to learn to use those dangerous quirks to save lives instead of taking them. Shudo would have paid more attention if not for the uneasy feeling gnawing at his gut. His eyes swept the area, every flicker of movement catching his attention. He tried to shake it off. Focus, he told himself. This is just another training exercise. Yet, something about the way the air felt too still, too heavy kept his nerves on edge. It happened almost immediately after they stepped inside. The lights flickered, a brief sputtering of brightness before plunging the interior into an eerie, dim glow. Shudo's muscles tensed, his senses heightened. Around him, his classmates exchanged confused glances, some assuming it was part of the training exercise. Then the doors locked with a loud, metallic clank. Shudo's breath hitched. This isn't part of the exercise. His instincts screamed at him that something was terribly wrong. Before anyone could voice their concerns, a swirling black portal materialized at the center of the facility, its inky tendrils stretching and twisting through the air. From within the darkness, figures began to emerge, villains. Dozens of them, their malicious grins and cold eyes sending a wave of panic through. The students. Everyone, stay together. Uncle Shoyuta barked, his scarf unraveling as he prepared for combat. 13, protect the students. It was almost funny how fast everything could go wrong. 010100000111110101010. Izuku watched with thinly veiled amusement as his dad, Nedzu, launched into yet another of his infamous, long-winded lectures aimed squarely at All Might. It was almost comical, the way Nedzu slowed down his speech, stretching each word like taffy, while All Might sat there in his deflated form, wearing the glazed-over expression of someone enduring unbearable boredom. Izuku could tell that his dad was doing this on purpose, dragging out every sentence, making each point about responsibility, limited resources, and consequences feel like a never-ending lecture about the basics of heroism. All Might nodded along at intervals, looking painfully strained, like a child forced to sit through a tedious lesson about chores. Both Izuku and Nedzu knew it was pointless. Nothing was getting through to All Might. He had long proven himself to be the kind of narcissistic hero who believed his reputation made him untouchable. Even if he pretended to listen, Izuku was convinced everything Nedzu said was going in one ear and straight out the other. But that didn't matter. Izuku knew the real purpose of this painfully drawn-out meeting. By the end of the day, All Might would be fired, and not even the HPSC could stop it. Nezu had made the conditions of All Might's employment clear, and the former number one had been given far more chances than he deserved. Today was his last. Still, before Nezu handed him the official dismissal, he would ensure All Might's final day was as insufferable as possible. Izuku could almost admire the patience it took to do this, though he wasn't sure how much longer he could stand listening. His dad's lectures were usually interesting, at least to someone who read quantum physics for fun, but this was a deliberate endurance test. Izuku was just about to leave them to it when something caught his eye, an error flashing across one of the system monitors. It was coming from the USJ. His amusement vanished instantly. Nezu! Izuku's voice cut through the monotony, his holographic form materializing into the room, startling All Might, who had been seconds away from dozing off. USJ has gone completely offline. Everything, cameras, alarms, communications, just blacked out. Nezu's playful demeanor evaporated as he turned to face Izuku. "Everything?" he asked, his voice sharp. Izuku nodded, his concern mirrored in the slight flicker of his virtual form. "I was monitoring it when suddenly nothing. The entire system went dark. It's like the whole place was wiped off the grid." Nezu's small eyes narrowed, his mind clearly racing. "Looks like your instincts were right, Mitos." He turned to All Might, who was still processing what was happening. "I hope you have some hero time left, All Might. You need to get to the USJ immediately." All Might nodded wordlessly and stood, but there was no urgency in his movements, no buffing up into his heroic form. He left the room at a casual pace, completely unfazed by the gravity of the situation. Nezu sighed and refocused on Izuku. "Mitos. Deploying HPSC and initiating protocol toybox." "Eve 5 minutes, Izuku replied, already working on the systems as his concern deepened. "Good," Nezu said, looking out the window just in time to see 5 rockets launching toward the USJ with blinding speed. "I'll assemble the teachers and move out immediately. Ensure the students are safe." "Understood." Izuku's virtual form disappeared as he prepared for action. In a matter of seconds, Izuku synchronized with HPSC, the powerful robotic body he had designed and perfected over the years. The connection was seamless, faster than ever since he had left the system prepped for exactly this kind of emergency. As his consciousness fully settled into the robotic form, he grabbed the green case that had been waiting by the wall. With a mental command, the case opened, and the sleek, green model harpy armor wrapped around him, locking into place with smooth efficiency. The shutters before him opened, revealing the launch pad that would take him straight to the USJ. Opening his wings, Izuku activated his thrusters and took off towards U1010000010011010101010. Things were going from bad to worse in a heartbeat. The moment they arrived at the USJ, chaos erupted. Villains flooded the facility, and the doors slammed shut, sealing them inside. Aizawa-sensei leaped into action, diving headfirst into battle, but the warp villains scattered the students throughout the building, leaving them separated and vulnerable. Hitoshi found himself in the mountain zone alongside Kaminari, Jiru, and Yaoyorozu. While they weren't struggling to hold their ground, the sheer number of villains was overwhelming. It had barely been a minute since the chaos began, yet Hitoshi could see fatigue setting in on all of them. The constant fighting was taking its toll, and it felt like the villains just kept pouring in. After using his bow staff to block a punch from a villain with a stone quirk, Hitoshi felt the weapon snap in half, leaving him with no choice but to resort to punches. To make matters worse, the villains seemed to be anticipating their quirks, most war gear designed to counter Jiru's attacks, while others had insulating quirks that rendered Kaminari's shocks ineffective. Hitoshi couldn't even use his quirk to take control of the situation, they were too well prepared. Yaoyorozu was their only saving grace, her versatility allowing her to create various tools and weapons, but even she couldn't defeat all the villains alone. Hitoshi felt a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach as he scanned the chaotic scene, hoping the others were faring better in their own battles. 010000000111011101110. Tuyu's heart raced as sweat trickled down her forehead, pooling in her brow. She had ended up in the conflagration zone with Tokoyami, Shiro, and Ojiro when the villain had scattered them, and this place felt like a nightmare for a group like theirs. Tokoyami had already voiced his concern bright light weakened dark shadow, and the oppressive heat was drying Tsuyu out. She could feel a feverish warmth creeping through her, making her increasingly dizzy. Shiro's tape was flammable, so that option was off the table as well. Ojiro didn't have any specific disadvantages, but with the current conditions, they were only slowing him. With no viable options, they had reluctantly sought refuge inside one of the burning buildings, desperate to evade the villains outside. Unfortunately, the enemies they encountered all seemed to possess fire or heat-resistant quirks, leaving them feeling like sitting ducks. The tension hung heavy in the air as they crouched in silence, their hearts pounding in unison. All they could do was hide and hope for rescue to arrive soon. Tsuyu just hoped it would come before she succumbed to the oppressive heat. 0100000111011101110. Tenya didn't know what to do. He was trapped in the flood zone with Kuda, Satu, and Kirishima, and none of them were particularly skilled swimmers. The water churned ominously around their ship, where dozens of water mutants lurked just beneath the surface. They were cornered, and there seemed to be no way out. Every so often, a villain would make a desperate attempt to climb aboard, but for the most part, they stayed submerged, where their aquatic abilities gave them the upper hand. The tension was palpable, and Tenya could sense the villain's patience waning with each passing second. How long before they decided to sink the ship and claim the students? His mind raced with questions. What could they possibly do to escape these villains? What would his brother do in this situation? Tenya had never felt this helpless before, and the weight of his responsibilities pressed down on him. As the class's vice president, it was his duty to maintain composure and keep his classmates calm. Panicking wouldn't help. He had to be the anchor in this storm. Yet, despite his resolve, anxiety gnawed at him. He kept glancing around, searching for any sign of rescue. With each moment that passed, his hope flickered like a candle in the wind, but he clung to the belief that help would come soon. 0100000101111101110. This was so frustrating. First, the villains had just appeared out of nowhere, throwing everything into chaos. Then Hobo-sensei jumped in to confront them, only to have the portal villain completely dismantle their efforts, taking out 13's costume and likely causing serious injuries no one here knew how to treat. Now they were all scattered throughout the USJ, and it was a mess. To make matters worse, it was clear that these villains were prepared. They knew exactly who they were dealing with and how to counter their quirks. Katsuki, Graplocked, and Raccoon Eyes had been thrown into the downpour zone, where the relentless rain stripped away any sweat Katsuki could muster. The cold was biting, and Raccoon Eyes' acid was rendered almost useless by the downpour. Graplocked was struggling too. The heavy rain drowned out any sounds, making it impossible for him to use his quirk effectively. And as if that wasn't enough, 13 had been teleported there with them but was in no shape to fight. Katsuki hated to admit it, but they were at a massive disadvantage. The only option was to barricade themselves inside one of the buildings and wait for rescue. Katsuki took it upon himself to fend off any villains that dared to approach, unleashing his anger with each explosion. But even that didn't ease his frustration at having to play the damsel in distress. It felt wrong and it made his blood boil. Still, he had to swallow his pride. 13 was hurt, and rescue was always the priority. He clenched his fists, determined to hold the line. He was sure Izuku had already figured out something was off and was leading the cavalry right behind him. There was no way he wouldn't come through for them. Katsuki could only hope Hobo-sensei could hold the villains at bay until help arrived. 0100000001111101110. At least one group was managing to hold their own. In the landslide zone, Shuto, Aoyama, Uraraka, and Hagakure had just wrapped up their fight with the last of the villains. They had clearly underestimated Shudo's capabilities. With his new support gear, he was a force to be reckoned with. The thermal regulator allowed him to use his ice quirk longer than ever before, while his shapeshifters enabled him to create intricate ice structures. The redirectors for his fire gave him the flexibility to combine both elements effectively. The villains didn't stand a chance. Shudo's ice encased their feet and blocked their paths, while Uraraka and Aoyama provided excellent long-range support. Uraraka sent debris flying at the villains, her attacks reminding him of the earthbenders from the cartoon he watched once, while Aoyama's laser blasts kept anyone who tried to close in on them at bay. Meanwhile, Hagakure scouted the area, her invisibility allowing her to slip past enemy lines and check for any stragglers or reinforcements. As he watched them fight, Shudo couldn't help but think of future support gear they could use. Maybe he could discuss it with them after this was all over. For now, though, he needed to focus on the task at hand. He doubted all his classmates were having as easy a time as they were. They needed to move to the other zones to help. His thoughts drifted to Uncle Shoyuda. He knew how strong Eraserhead was, but he was primarily an ambush fighter. Long fights against multiple enemies weren't his strong suit, and while he was no one-trick pony, Shudo knew he could easily become overwhelmed. Still, he could hear Uncle Shuda's voice in his head, reminding him that their focus needed to be on their classmates. His uncle was a hero and could take care of himself. The same couldn't be said for all of their classmates. They needed to hold on. Shudo was sure Izuku would be there soon, and he could only hope that Uncle Shoyuda could hold on long enough for help to arrive. 010100010011110101010. Shoyuda panted heavily as he slammed another villain into the ground, narrowly dodging a swift swipe from a dagger that almost caught him in the side. With a quick glance, he cancelled the quirk of another villain attempting to shoot something at him, sending their projectile harmlessly into the air. Before the villain could regain their footing, Shoyuda was already on them, driving his knee into their nose with a satisfying thud. He had little time to savor the moment as his attention shifted to the man who appeared to be the leader of the villains. The figure stood confidently beside a bizarre purple creature with an exposed brain, muttering something under his breath. 16, 17, Shoyuda strained to hear as he focused on a nearby villain with a fire quirk. He pulled them closer with his capture weapon and slammed them headfirst into the floor. But in that brief moment of distraction, the villain leader lunged at him, hands outstretched. Shoyuda aimed a quick jab at the villain's solar plexus, but the leader intercepted him, grasping his elbow just before impact. In that instant, Shoyuda blinked, unintentionally deactivating his quirk. A surge of pain shot through him as he felt the sleeve of his costume disintegrate away, followed by a sharp agony in his elbow. Instinct kicked in. He managed to kick the villain away and jump back just before they could sever his arms. But the decay had gone deep enough that he could see muscle beneath the exposed skin. "You're really cool, Eraserhead. The minions can't touch you at all," the villain taunted, an unhinged grin barely concealed by the hand covering his face. "But I think I let you farm long enough." Shoyuda gritted his teeth and glared at the villain, steeling himself for whatever would come next. However, before the villain could say anything else, the portal villain appeared once more. Shigaraki Tamura, the mist-covered villain, greeted. "Kurogyri. Is 13 dead?" the leader, Shigaraki Tamura, asked, his voice dripping with a chilling amusement. 13 is still alive, but they won't be getting up anytime soon, Kurogyri replied, his tone eerily calm. "The students are all scattered as well. No one managed to escape me. But they must be being slaughtered as we speak," Shigaraki said with a twisted grin. Shoyuda felt his heart sink at those words. His students were scattered and likely surrounded by villains. They could be in grave danger right now. He turned to run after them, but before he could make any headway, he found himself face to face with the hulking abomination that had been guarding Shigaraki just a moment before. "Where are you going, Eraserhead?" Shigaraki taunted, amusement lacing his voice. "Do you think you can skip the boss fight like some speedrunner? You still have to face the Nomu." Before Shoyuta could even process what was happening, the monstrous figure was already in his face, delivering a brutal punch to his chest. The sound of cracking ribs echoed in his ears, and he felt the force of the blow knock the breath out of him. Just as he was about to hit the ground, the creature seized him by the arms, breaking them as if they were nothing more than fragile twigs. Panic surged through him. He tried to erase its quirk, but this thing clearly had a mutation quirk, rendering his erasure useless. The creature grabbed him by the head and slammed him into the ground, the impact cracking the floor beneath him. Ha ha ha. Shigaraki cackled, reveling in the spectacle. What do you think, Eraserhead? Isn't my Nomu strong? It was made especially for the symbol of peace, but I'm sure it won't mind killing you first. Shoyuta felt the corners of his vision darkening, the world around him blurring. He was certain he had a concussion at the very least, but it felt worse than that. He struggled against the Nomu's iron grip, but it was useless. The creature's strength was overwhelming. Well, we've already played enough. Nomu. Before Shigaraki could finish his order, the glass dome at the top of the Yi shattered, and 5 boxes descended from it, landing not far from them. What the hell is that? Shigaraki exclaimed, taken aback. Before anyone could investigate, the first box began playing a slow, haunting melody reminiscent of a music box. The other 4 boxes flew away, each headed toward one of the zones. The music continued to play softly, and Shigaraki narrowed his eyes at it. I know this music. But why is it playing here? His expression shifted from confusion to horror as the melody began to slow down. Sheet. Kurogiri, wind the box. Kurogiri looked at Shigaraki in confusion, but before he could respond, the music stopped completely. Shigaraki's face drained of color. We're screwed, he muttered. A second later, the box opened, and like a jack-in-the-box, something leapt from it. The last thing Shoyuta heard before finally losing consciousness was a sound that resembled a distorted scream. Denki's vision blurred as he desperately tried to draw in air, the iron grip of the villain around his throat tightening with each passing second. His heart pounded furiously against his ribcage, and every small movement sent sharp jolts of pain radiating through his neck. He could barely breathe, barely think. The villain had appeared out of nowhere, striking with speed and precision none of them were prepared for. One moment, Denki had been fighting alongside his classmates, fending off waves of attackers, and the next, he was dangling in the air, fingers clawing uselessly at the vice-like grip around his neck. His classmates stood frozen, their weapons discarded on the ground as the villain barked out his demands. Smart kids, the villain sneered, his voice low and taunting. Drop anything that looks remotely dangerous, and your little sparky friend here might just live for another minute or two. Denki desperately tried to summon his quirk, just a small spark, anything that could help. But it was no use. The villain's suit was coated in insulation material, making him completely immune to electricity. It was like trying to shock a rubber tire. The hand around his throat tightened even further. Black spots danced in his vision as his chest burned with the need for air. He tried to kick out, but his movements were sluggish, his strength draining fast. You'd better not be thinking of anything stupid, the villain growled, shifting his grip slightly. Denki let out a wheeze as the pressure increased, his body jerking instinctively. I can snap this kid's neck faster than any of you can blink. Trust me, I've done it before. Denki's mind spiraled into panic. He was going to die. He didn't want to die. His friends were helpless. The villains circling them were closing in. It was over. And then, through the fog of fear and suffocation, a distant sound broke through the chaos, a low hum, faint but growing louder. Denki's dazed mind dismissed it as a hallucination at first, a trick played by his oxygen-starved brain. But the sound grew sharper, heavier, until it was unmistakable, the roar of something barreling through the air at high speed. The villains didn't notice at first, their focus locked on their captives. But Denki, squinting through his darkening vision, forced himself to look. He saw a shadow ascending toward them, descending rapidly from above. A split second later, it crashed into the ground with a deafening thud, shaking the earth beneath their feet and sending a cloud of dust billowing into the air. What the hell was that? One of the villains shouted, their confidence wavering. When the dust settled, A strange object stood in the center of the impact zone. It was a box, no, not just a box, but a giant jack-in-the-box. Painted in garish colors, it looked almost like a twisted child's toy, complete with a large crank on its side that began to turn on its own. A slow, haunting melody began to play, the eerie, dissonant notes cutting through the silence like a knife. The villains froze, their earlier bravado replaced with confusion and unease. "What is this?" the villain holding Denki muttered, loosening his grip slightly as he stared at the bizarre contraption. The music continued, growing louder and more distorted, until it abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone held their breath, waiting, watching. Then, with an explosive burst, the lid of the box flew open, and a blur shot out. Before anyone could react, the villain holding Denki was ripped away, flung like a rag doll across the zone. He crashed into the mountainside with a sickening thud, sliding limply to the ground. Denki dropped to his knees, gasping for air as his classmates rushed to his side. His vision cleared just enough to see the villains frantically searching their surroundings, their panic palpable. One by one, they were taken down, each hit by an unseen force that moved too fast for any of them to counter. "What's going on? Who's that?" one of the villains screamed, firing their quirk wildly into the shadows. The attacks came faster now, each strike perfectly calculated to incapacitate. Soon, only one villain remained, trembling as a towering figure emerged from the dust and shadows. Denki blinked, his breath catching as he took in the sight. Standing before them was a massive, brown robot, its body vaguely shaped like a bear. It loomed over the final villain, its glowing eyes locking onto him like a predator sizing up its prey. The villain, in a last-ditch effort, lunged for Denki, but the robot moved faster. In a single fluid motion, it grabbed the villain by the sides and lifted him effortlessly into the air. "Hands off the kids," the robot declared in the goofiest voice they ever heard, completely at odds with its intimidating appearance. Everyone froze, the absurdity of the moment throwing them off completely. Then, the robot opened its mouth wide and bit down on the villain's shoulder with a loud crunch. The villain screamed in agony as blood splattered to the ground. The robot dropped him unceremoniously, leaving him clutching his mangled shoulder and writhing in pain. Denki felt a hand on his back and looked up to see Shinso helping him to his feet. Around them, his classmates were too stunned to speak, their eyes locked on the bizarre machine. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe because Denki was still feeling lightheaded from almost being chocked to death, but his mouth filter wasn't working at that moment. "Was that the bite of 87? He blurted out, his voice hoarse but incredulous. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Shinso let out a groan, dragging a hand down his face. "Kaminari, I swear to God. 010100000111110101010. Is that a bird?" Tsu asked, her voice tinged with disbelief as she watched the pure carnage in front of her. "I think it's supposed to be a chick," Tokoyami replied, his usual dark tone faltering, too stunned to even put his usual flair into his words. The source of the madness was an enormous, bright yellow figure, something that looked like a cross between a fast food mascot and a killer robot. It was mowing down villains with an ease that was both disturbing and awe-inspiring. Whatever that was, seemed to be enjoying itself, laughing maniacally as it tossed one villain through a building, sending debris and dust flying, then proceeded to smash two more villains' heads together before flinging them away like ragdolls. "I'm almost more scared of this thing than I am of the villains," Ojiro muttered under his breath, his tail twitching. The only reason the students hadn't bolted from the zone yet was that the strange jack-in-the-box that had appeared earlier had UA's logo on the side. As bizarre and terrifying as it was, they knew it had to be on their side. But that didn't make it any less confusing. Or terrifying. "This thing is unhinged," Siro said, his voice cracking slightly. He looked over at the colossal chick, which had just grabbed a villain by the leg and swung them around like a bat, knocking down 3 others in a single sweep. "I don't know if I should be laughing or screaming." A villain with a fire quirk tried to use flames against the monstrosity, but the chick seemed unfazed, opening its beak wide as it absorbed the flames. The air grew hot, and when the attack was finished, fire poured from its beak like a torrent, its eyes glowing a fierce orange, burning brighter with each passing second. "Did things get really hot in here, or is it just me?" it said, its voice now a distorted, otherworldly echo. Without a second's hesitation, it leapt at the villain who had dared attack it. "Never mind," Zero squeaked, his eyes wide. "Definitely screaming." All four of them nodded in agreement, except for Dark Shadow, who seemed to be really enjoying the massacre if her cackling was any indication. 010100000111011101010. Why is there a huge blue rabbit robot thing staring down the villains? Kirishima asked, his voice a mix of confusion and awe as he peered down from the top of the ship in the flood zone. The colossal blue rabbit robot stood menacingly, yet somehow adorably, its glowing eyes scanning the villains below with an unnerving intensity. Its oversized ears twitched every so often, seemingly aware of its surroundings, while its mechanical limbs flexed in anticipation. It was clearly waiting for something, but for now, it remained perfectly still, perched on the edge of the ship, eyeing the enemies as though it were deciding when to strike. Honestly, Tenya was just as confused. The strange machine had come from the bizarre jack-in-the-box that had appeared out of nowhere, but since then, it hadn't made a move. It was just watching the villains, its presence an unsettling mix of potential and mystery. The villains had stopped their advance for a moment, their focus fixed on the robot, but none of them dared to approach it, unsure of what it might do. Then, one of the villains, seemingly fed up with waiting, shouted out in frustration. "Screw this thing. Let's just kill them," he yelled, rallying his comrades. But the moment he turned away to speak to the others, the robot jumped into action. Its movements were impossibly fast and precise, like a torpedo cutting through the water. The villain's eyes widened as he turned around, realizing too late that the machine was already on him. In a flash, both the villain and the robot disappeared beneath the water. Everyone watched in stunned silence as bubbles rose to the surface for several seconds, then stopped. The villain floated back up, unconscious. The robot was nowhere to be seen. "Find it! Find it!" Another villain shouted, his voice panicked as he scrambled to regain control of the situation. Before anyone could react, the panicked villain let out a scream as he was suddenly dragged under the water. Moments later, he resurfaced, limp and unconscious, just like the first. The robot moved silently through the water, its every strike swift and decisive. Each time a villain tried to escape or make noise, it homed in on them, yanking them down before diving back underwater. It was as if the robot was completely in control of the situation, picking off the villains one by one with eerie precision. The villains began to panic, some of them trying to scramble up the side of the boat in a desperate bid for safety. But it was useless. The robot always seemed to find them, taking them out before they even had a chance to react. The water was soon filled with floating, unconscious bodies, and the robot, having dealt with its targets, jumped back onto the ship, returning to its original position. Tenya blinked, still processing what had just happened. "That was," he began, at a loss for words. "Freaky?" Sadu asked, his voice steady but wide-eyed. "Terrifying," Kuda signed, his expression serious. "Manly?" Kirishima chimed in with a grin, looking at his classmates. Everyone turned to him, giving him a blank stare. "What? The robots saved us," he added with a shrug. They couldn't argue with that logic. The robot might have been strange, but it had just saved them in the most dramatic way possible. 010100000111110110110. What the hell is going on out there? Katsuki growled, his voice loud enough to echo through the room. The sound of distant screams pierced through the walls, sharp and full of terror. Katsuki could recognize the panic in those cries. It was the unmistakable sound of fear. But something wasn't adding up. Why were the villains screaming? Were the heroes finally here? Katsuki shook his head. No way. The cavalry couldn't have arrived this quickly. Not even Izuku would have been able to get them here so fast. His thoughts raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Maybe some security measure triggered? Izuku wouldn't hesitate to rig the whole DMN-USJ with traps. It was something that nerd would totally do. Graplocked. Katsuki barked, snapping his attention to the tall student. Graplock's extra arms morphed into elongated ears, and he pressed them to the wall, straining to listen. They're screaming something about a fox, Graplocked said, furrowing his brow in concentration. It's hard to hear with all this rain, but I can make out a few words. Fos. Waltz. Spider. What in the world is going on out there? Raccoon Eyes asked, her voice filled with disbelief. She cautiously approached the window, peering outside, desperate to catch a glimpse of the whatever was happening outside. Before she could make sense of anything, a villain suddenly crashed through the window, landing with a thud next to the still unconscious 13. The villain was knocked out cold, a massive, bloody bite mark on their shoulder. Raccoon Eyes gasped in shock, but before she could scream, Katsuki slapped a hand over her mouth, hissing at her to stay quiet. Something's coming, Graplocked warned, his eyes wide with alarm. And just as he spoke, something strange crawled through the window. It was like a bizarre hybrid between a fox and a spider, skittering across the floor with sharp, calculating eyes. The creature paused when it spotted the unconscious villain, but its focus shifted quickly back to the room. Its long mechanical limbs retracted, and the creature lowered itself, revealing a white and pink fox robot, complete with a ridiculous red bow tie. What the hell? Katsuki muttered under his breath, disbelief thick in his voice. Of course, this was something that DMN nerd would come up with. He quickly shook his head at the absurdity of the situation. Oi, fox, he called, raising his voice without hesitation. Raccoon Eyes shot him a panicked look, but Katsuki ignored her, his gaze locked on the robot. Help's coming, the fox's voice echoed, its eyes meeting Katsuki's for a moment. We don't have all day. 13's hurt. Help's on the way, a vaguely female voice came from a speaker on the fox's chest. Stay there. Their wound is not lethal. Hey, great, Katsuki muttered, the frustration clear in his voice. What about the others? They'll be fine. Stay here, the fox responded before it turned and jumped back out the window from where it came. Don't tell me what to do. Katsuki yelled after it, but the fox had already disappeared. DMN trash can. Finally, he released Raccoon Eyes, who immediately slapped his arm, her face a mix of confusion and panic. What the hell, Bakugu? How did you know that thing wouldn't attack us? She demanded, her voice cracking with disbelief. Katsuki shot her a look like she was the dumbest person in the room. Don't be stupid, Raccoon Eyes. It was attacking the villains, so it's obvious it's on our side. He rolled his eyes. Also, it had Yue's emblem on its tail. I wasn't looking at the tail, she snapped, eyes wide. Did you see how sharp those teeth were? Sounds like a you problem, Katsuki shot back with a shrug. 010100000111110101010. When Shudo arrived at the Central Plaza, he was bracing himself for the worst. He prayed his uncle would still be alive, injured, maybe, but alive. He expected a lot of things to be happening. But this wasn't on the list. In the middle of the plaza stood Shigaraki Tamura, if the villain Shudo interrogated was correct, flailing like a wild animal. He was tangled in the spindly, string-like limbs of what looked like a black and white puppet-like robot. The machine's elongated limbs coiled and twisted around Shigaraki like marionette strings, binding his arms and torso while keeping his deadly hands away from anything he could touch. Get this thing off me! Shigaraki shrieked, his voice raw with fury as he clawed uselessly at the cords trapping him. The robot didn't even flinch, instead tightening its grip and forcing his head back into an awkward position. The puppet said softly, its eerily calm voice carrying through the silence like a whisper. Stop struggling. Shudo's eyes darted toward the ground nearby, where his uncle Shoyuda lay pinned beneath a grotesque purple monstrosity. The hulking creature Nomu, Shudo thought, recalling the name from the intel, was a nightmare made flesh. Its bulging muscles rippled under sickly, grayish-purple skin, and its exposed brain pulsated grotesquely. Its jagged, beak-like mouth hovered close to Uncle Shoyuta, who was struggling weakly, his bruised face etched with pain. Shudo's brain stalled, unable to process the sheer absurdity of the scene. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. The villain with the mist-like body Kurogiri, if he remembered correctly, hovered nearby, desperately trying to free Shigaraki. But no matter how he twisted and warped his portals, the robot's limbs remained stubbornly tangled, dragging Shigaraki along whenever Kurogiri tried to teleport him. Get this thing away from me!" Shigaraki roared, his voice cracking with frustration. The Nomu obeyed immediately, unceremoniously dropping Uncle Shoyuta to the ground as it lumbered toward the robot. But the puppet was faster. The moment the Nomu's massive hand reached out, the robot released Shigaraki and latched onto the Nomu's arm instead, its string-like limbs twisting and coiling with terrifying speed. It slithered up the Nomu's body like a living thing, wrapping tightly around its neck. The Nomu thrashed violently, trying to shake the robot off, but its movements only made things worse. Its wild swings sent nearby villains flying as it accidentally decked them with its massive fists. The chaos was almost comical, if not for the sheer danger of the situation. Shudo snapped himself out of his daze and took action. He slammed his foot into the ground, creating an ice platform that rose beneath his unconscious uncle. The platform extended into a slide, pulling Uncle Shoyuta away from the fight and toward relative safety. "Hold on, Uncle," Shudo muttered, throwing Uncle Shuta's arm over his shoulder as he began dragging him further away. Uncle Shoyuta was still breathing, but he was unconscious, and Shudo suspected a concussion at the very least. As Shudo struggled to retreat, Shigaraki's enraged voice cut through the din. "Let's see if you'll drop the Nomu to save this little hero." Shudo's head snapped up just in time to see Shigaraki charging toward him, his hand outstretched and ready to decay everything in its path. The puppet tried to intervene, detaching from the Nomu and leaping toward Shigaraki, but this time the Nomu was faster. It landed a devastating punch that sent the robot flying into the plaza's fountain with a metallic crash. Shudo's heart stopped. Shigaraki was too close. He barely had time to react, his ice forming too slowly to create a proper barrier. Instinct took over, and he dropped his uncle, stepping in front of him to shield him with his own body. Shudo squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the searing pain of Shigaraki's quirk. But the pain never came. Instead, he heard a sharp swoosh, followed by a shriek of pain. Shudo's eyes flew open. Shigaraki stood a few feet away, clutching his wrist in agony. His right hand, his most dangerous weapon, was gone, severed cleanly at the wrist. A smell of burnt flesh coming from the cauterized wound. Between Shuto and Shigaraki stood a figure in bright green armor, glowing with energy. Two purple blades of pure energy extended from the figure's hands, one raised mid-swing. "Hands off," the figure said coldly. Shudo's breath hitched as he stared at Izuku. His friend's face was partially obscured by the green helmet, its sleek design barely leaving room for expression. Yet the pure, unwavering anger in Izuku's eyes burned through the visor, intense and focused. It was a look Shudo had never seen before. Izuku took a slow, deliberate step forward, the hum of his glowing purple energy blades reverberating ominously in the air. The blades pulsed with every breath he took, their sharp edges vibrating with lethal precision. Shigaraki, still clutching his severed wrist, staggered backward, his face contorted in equal parts rage and disbelief. His breath came out in ragged gasps as blood dripped from his wrist to the ground. His eyes flicked between Izuku and the hand lying on the floor, the reality of his injury dawning on him with every second. "You bastard!" Shigaraki spat, his voice trembling with fury. He took another step back, eyes narrowing at Izuku. But Izuku didn't spare him a second glance. Instead, his piercing green eyes shifted to Shuto and the unconscious Uncle Shoyuta. His expression softened just slightly, though his voice remained steady and commanding. "I'll handle the rest, Shudo," Izuku said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Get Shoyuta out of here. Now." Before Shudo could respond, Izuku raised his voice and called out, "TB5. The puppet robot leapt into the scene from the wrecked fountain, moving with an eerie fluidity. Despite the crack running across its porcelain-like mask, it showed no signs of damage. It skittered to Izuku's side on its long, spindly limbs, lowering itself to a crouch like an obedient sentinel. "Escort them to the exit," Izuku instructed, his energy blades flaring brighter. "Then stand guard until the others arrive with the students. Activate guard protocol red level." The puppet nodded silently, its previously empty eye sockets glowing with two ominous white lights. Without a word, it gestured for Shuto to follow. Shuto hesitated, glancing between Izuku and Shigaraki. He wanted to help, but something in Izuku's tone made him realize this wasn't the time to argue. With a deep breath, he slung Uncle Shuto's arm over his shoulder again and began following the puppet toward safety. Shigaraki, however, had reached his limit. His entire body shook with unbridled rage, the pain of his injury overshadowed by his humiliation. His teeth clenched so tightly that blood dribbled from the corners of his mouth. "You think you can ignore me?" he roared, his voice raw and unhinged. "You think you can just walk away?" Shuto instinctively glanced over his shoulder and saw Shigaraki pointing his good hand toward Izuku, his lips twisting into a deranged snarl. "Nomu," he bellowed, his voice echoing across the plaza. "Kill this cheater. Now." The Nomu's grotesque form twitched in response, its exposed brain pulsing faster as it locked onto Izuku. Its muscles flexed, its bloodshot eyes narrowing, and with a bone-rattling roar, it charged at him like a freight train. Shuto's heart clenched in fear, but Izuku didn't flinch. Instead, Izuku raised one glowing blade, the faint hint of a smirk playing at his lips. "Bring it." As Shuto climbed back to the entrance where he could already see a few of his classmates being guided by other robots, he felt the shockwave of the first clash between Izuku and the Nomu. He wanted to help, but he knew he would only get in the way and potentially even end up as a hostage. The only thing he could do now was to trust his friend to deal with the problem, and hopefully not completely ruin his body. Izuku's HUD flickered erratically, his visor flashing with endless streams of data as his scanner scrambled to make sense of the entity before him. Every diagnostic, every calculation, every threat assessment came back the same error. Unknown. Reassessing. The system recalibrated over and over, but no matter how many times it ran its scans, the result didn't change. This thing, it wasn't natural. It shouldn't exist. His grip on his energy blades tightened as he took in the creature's grotesque form. The Nomu twitched in place, its grotesquely stitched muscles bulging and flexing in ways that defied anatomy. Its tar-black skin glistened under the dim, flickering light, and the pulsing of its exposed brain matched the ragged, inhuman heaves of its breath. Its soulless, bloodshot eyes locked onto Izuku, unblinking, calculating. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from the Nomu's throat, sending a fresh cascade of alerts across Izuku's HUD. A giant warning flashed in bright, glaring red. The warning vanished. So did the Nomu. Izuku reacted on instinct. He launched himself into the air, thrusters flaring just as the Nomu's fist came crashing down. A thunderous boom erupted beneath him, the sheer force of the impact cratering the ground where he had stood only milliseconds before. Cracks spiderwebbed outward, debris flying in all directions. Izuku barely had time to process before his scanners flickered again, struggling to keep up. Too fast. He had seen speed quirks before, but this? The Nomu had moved almost as if teleporting, closing the distance in a fraction of a second. This level of acceleration could rival Ingenium's lower gears. Was it a speed quirk? Or was this unnatural movement purely a byproduct of its strength? The creature lunged again. Izuku anticipated the attack this time, twisting midair and swinging his right blade. A sharp hiss filled the air as the plasma edge sliced through the Nomu's arm cleanly, severing it at the elbow. The limb fell, landing with a wet thud against the broken pavement. Izuku didn't stop there. He twisted his body, using the momentum to deliver a hard kick to the creature's torso, trying to send it stumbling back. Instead, the Nomu barely reacted. It didn't even flinch. This was using the model Harpy instead of model Heracles, so his kicking power wasn't near the maximum, but that didn't mean his kicks were weak. Shock absorption, then? Problematic, but not impossible to work around. Heat and cutting attacks seemed effective, so it wasn't fully invulnerable. That was something. A slow, amused chuckle pulled Izuku's focus back to the blue-haired villain standing a short distance away. His grin stretched wide beneath the disembodied hand biological matter detected, human origin covering his face. "I'll admit, you're not bad for a cheater," the blue-haired villain mused, tilting his head slightly, his voice laced with amusement. But Sensei made this summon to beat all might at his peak. His crimson eyes gleamed with twisted delight. "There's no way it'll lose to you." He extended his remaining hand toward the Nomu. "And you?" He snapped, his voice a mix of frustration and glee. "Stop playing around." The Nomu twitched, and then it began to move. Izuku barely had time to process the villain's words before the Nomu twitched, and so did its severed arm. His HUD flared with rapid-fire alerts, his visor flooding with data as his scanners struggled to keep up. Cellular activity off the charts. The exposed stump on the Nomu's arm began shifting, flesh bubbling and stretching like something out of a horror film. Black sinew slithered across raw muscle, re-knitting together at an impossible speed. In seconds, where there had once been a cleanly severed wound, the creature's arm was whole again. Izuku's breath hitched. High-speed regeneration. This wasn't just problematic. This was a whole new level of bullshit. The Nomu flexed its newly restored fingers, curling them experimentally before clenching its fist. Its grotesque, beak-like mouth opened slightly, releasing a low, distorted croak. His HUD flickered again. Unknown variable detected. Izuku gritted his teeth. If the Nomu could recover from plasma-based amputation in mere seconds, then his current strategy was already useless. A direct fight would be a war of attrition, one he wouldn't win. He needed a new plan. Analyze. And this fast. But before he could move, the Nomu disappeared. Izuku's thrusters roared to life, his instincts kicking in as he launched himself sideways. A fraction of a second later, the Nomu's massive arm tore through the air where his head had been. The sheer force of the missed strike detonated through the plaza like a bomb. The shockwave obliterated the ground beneath it, sending cracked spider webbing outward and launching debris in all directions. Chunks of shattered concrete slammed into Izuku's armor as he twisted midair, sensors screaming warnings in his ears. Too close. Too fast. The Nomu was already on him again, its inhuman speed unnatural, a blur of black muscle and bloodshot eyes. Izuku moved a second too late. The punch connected. A sickening crunch echoed through the plaza as the Nomu's fist shattered his left arm. The impact sent him flying meters away, his body slamming into the ground in a skidding heap. His armor groaned in protest, sparks flickering along his shoulder as his HUD screamed with alerts. Warning! Limb structure compromised. Izuku forced himself up, vision flickering behind his visor. His left arm was barely hanging on, twisted unnaturally, wires sparking and plating bent beyond repair. The internal mechanisms twitched, still trying to function despite being completely wrecked. There was no fixing this. He exhaled sharply. Then it was dead weight. Detach. He sent the instruction. With a sharp hiss, the ruined limb disengaged from his shoulder joint, landing with a metallic clatter against the cracked floor. Sparks flickered from the severed connections, his HUD instantly recalibrating to compensate for the loss. A slow, amused chuckle drifted from the other side of the battlefield. "Oh, so this secret boss wasn't a human after all?" Blue Hair mused, his crimson eyes practically glowing with intrigue. "Interesting." He took a casual step forward, twirling his severed hand between his fingers like a toy. "That's some advanced machinery you've got there, reploid." His grin stretched wider. "Predatory. Hungry. I guess that means you must be the famous Mitos, huh?" Izuku barely spared him a glance as he dismissed the remaining damage reports cluttering his HUD. He didn't need his system shoving alerts in his face to know he was damaged. Instead, he straightened visor glowing, energy blade humming in his remaining hand. "And what if I am?" Izuku didn't react to the taunt. His focus remained on the Nomu, mind racing as he analyzed, recalculated, adapted. His systems were already rerouting power to compensate for his missing limb, but the real problem was still standing in front of him. a regenerating, shock-absorbing powerhouse built specifically to kill All Might. A direct attack wouldn't work. Attrition was off the table. He needed another approach. Still, he spared a glance at the blue-haired villain, his voice flat. "I could say the same about your toy," Izuku muttered. "I can see why All Might would have struggled against it." His fingers twitched over the hilt of his remaining blade. The energy core hummed in response, its violet glow pulsing in time with his heartbeat. The villain merely scoffed, tossing his severed hand behind his shoulder. A portal swallowed it whole before it could hit the ground. "That's quite a rude thing to say about your fellow hero," the villain mused. Izuku let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Oh please. No one likes that narcissistic a-hole." His visor glowed ominously as he spoke, his tone devoid of warmth. "If not for the fact you're trying to hurt the kids too, I might have even let you kill him." The villain paused. That caught his attention. His crimson eyes flickered with curiosity, intrigue momentarily overriding his usual manic glee. He hadn't expected that kind of hostility toward the so-called #1 hero. Izuku didn't stop. What? That man might be loved by the public, but all heroes know how much of a fraud he is. His grip tightened around his blade. He's only at the top because he's the HPSC's golden boy. They bury all his dirty laundry. For the briefest of moments, the blue-haired villain's grin faltered. He tilted his head, studying Izuku like he was some bizarre puzzle that didn't quite fit the picture he'd been expecting. Then he laughed. A low, amused chuckle at first, but it quickly spiraled into something more manic. "Oh, now that's interesting." He wiped at his mouth, eyes practically gleaming. "And here I thought all you hero types worshipped him like some untouchable god." Izuku let out a sharp, humorless exhale. "I'll worship that BS the day hell freezes over." He spat, venom laced into every syllable. The blue-haired villain hummed, tapping his chin thoughtfully. "So, let me get this straight. You hate All Might." His head tilted further. "The symbol of peace? The so-called greatest hero of all time?" Izuku's response was immediate. "Hate doesn't even begin to describe what I feel for that BSRD." The blue-haired villain's grin stretched wide. Delighted. Almost childlike in its excitement. "Oh, this is just too good." He let out another cackle, rocking on his heels like he was enjoying a private joke. "What a shame, though." His tone shifted into something oddly genuine. "In different circumstances, I think we'd be good friends, Mitos." Izuku stayed silent. Because the worst part? He wasn't wrong. If he'd met someone else instead of Nedzu, if his path had taken a different turn, there was a very real chance he would have ended up just like this man. His grip on his blade tightened. "I don't hate you," he admitted, leveling his sword at the blue-haired villain. "But you need to stay out of my way." The blue-haired villain's smirk returned, sharper than before. "That won't happen." He lifted his hand lazily, a flick of his fingers signaling the end of their little chat. "Destroying you won't stop you forever, but you'll take a while to come back." His expression darkened. "Nomu rip him to shreds." The Nomu's eyes flared with a predatory, almost sadistic gleam. Without warning, it surged forward with terrifying speed, each step causing the ground to tremble beneath it. Izuku's systems screamed for him to react, but the creature was just a little too fast for him to react in time. Before he could even brace himself, the Nomu was already upon him. Its fist slammed into Izuku's chest with bone-shattering force, sending him flying backward like a rag doll. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing through his armor as pieces of it shattered upon contact. His HUD flooded with red alerts as his body collided violently with the concrete, leaving cracks in the ground where he hit. Status: critical. Izuku's head swam as his internal systems groaned, trying to reboot. His body felt unresponsive, every part of him sluggish and overloaded. His remaining energy blade sputtered and died, the core fractured beyond repair. Yet, despite the barrage of warnings screaming in his ear, Izuku's mind pushed past the pain. He couldn't afford to stop. Not now. And then, students approaching. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. Kirishima and Katsuki, they weren't supposed to be here. They should have been safely escorted out by the robots. How had they gotten past them? Before he could think further, his eyes snapped to the villain, whose malicious grin grew even wider. His finger pointed directly at the approaching students. "Can you protect your precious kids, Mitos? Let's test it." He sneered, voice dripping with malice. "Nomu, catch." Izuku's heart dropped. The Nomu's eyes, devoid of any trace of mercy, locked onto the students in an instant. Its monstrous body jerked forward, the ground beneath it cracking and buckling with every step as it charged toward them. The reality of the situation hit Izuku full force. If he didn't act now, the students would be. He wouldn't let that happen. Izuku's mind raced. Time slowed, every moment stretching out as he calculated his next move. There was only one shot at stopping this beast before it reached them. He didn't hesitate. With a deep, forced breath, he activated his thrusters. His body surged forward, the speed nearly tearing him apart, but he ignored the warnings flashing through his HUD. Warning: redirecting energy will cause the core to overheat. He didn't care. It was the only way. The only chance. In an instant, Izuku collided with the Nomu's back, his body crashing into its massive frame. His remaining arm shot out, fingers piercing its flesh. He dug into its ribs, using his remaining strength to hold on tight as his thrusters flared, lifting both him and the Nomu off the ground. As he started flowing, his mind briefly clocked the doors of the UA being burst by a sound wave as the teachers arrived, but he barely registered it. He kept flying up, bursting through the glass dome of the USJ and continuing up, directing all energy to the core. His voice was strained, each word a battle. Overclock, maximum input. Warning, systems overloaded. Shutting down to avoid. Override. Izuku gritted through clenched teeth. Maximum output. Meltdown imminent. He didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. The air crackled, building intensity as his core surged with energy. Izuku's vision blurred, his body seizing from the overload, but his grip remained firm on the Nomu. He fought through the dizziness, through the pain, keeping himself focused on one thing only: getting high enough. The Nomu thrashed, trying to break free, but its struggles were useless. Izuku held it in place, flying higher and higher, his systems screaming at him to stop, to pull back. He couldn't. Not now. Not when the students were so close to danger. Get higher. Just a bit more. Finally, with one last burst of energy, he reached a height where the explosion wouldn't affect anyone below. His core was at its absolute limit, the circuits beginning to fry from the overload, but Izuku didn't hesitate. With a strained breath, he issued the final command. Initiate self-destruction. A final burst of energy rocketed through his body as his circuits ignited and began to crackle. Sparks flew from his broken systems, and his vision flickered flashes of red, yellow, and blue cutting through the blackness. Kaboom! Beach! Izuku's body exploded with a deafening roar, a blinding flash of light enveloping everything in its path as the Nomu's form was consumed by the blast. Then Izuku's vision went black as his consciousness was forcefully ejected from the destroyed body. 010100000111110101010. Shudo had just passed Uncle Shoyuda to the paramedics when he heard the boom. All the students stood in stunned silence, their gazes fixed on the fiery explosion that had ripped through the sky. A deafening roar reverberated across the area, the shockwave shaking the very ground beneath them. Some instinctively raised their arms, shielding their eyes from the blinding light, squinting through the haze as the remnants of the explosion billowed outward, leaving destruction in its wake. Shuto stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the sky. The intensity of the blast barely seemed to faze him, though his senses picked up the distant sound of gunshots and the sudden appearance of a portal, seemingly teleporting the villain away. But none of that registered. His focus was elsewhere, on the two small dots descending from the sky. One of them drifted off to the side, landing somewhere out of sight, likely within the perimeter of UA's grounds. But the second, Shudo's heart sank as it fell straight down through the broken dome, hitting the floor and bouncing, somehow landing right in front of his feet. His stomach dropped as he realized what it was. It wasn't just any falling object. It was all that remained of Magstic. Ahead. He heard a shriek behind him, but he didn't check who it was. His attention was already on the object on the floor. He knelt down and grabbed it by the sides of its head. He stared at the faceless expression, frustration bubbling in his chest. "And it is Izuku," he hissed under his breath, his voice thick with anger and disbelief. "Self-destruction? Really? You had to use that?" He lifted the head higher, glaring at it as if it could answer him. "I'm revoking your Meowdos privileges for that one." The others were probably looking at him like he was crazy for yelling at a disembodied head, but Shudo didn't care. He wasn't even the one who built Magstic, but he couldn't help his frustration. He should probably explain to his classmates that Mitos wasn't dead and he would probably be back in a minute or two, once his systems rebooted and he went into a new host. But Katsuki stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat as the shockwave from the explosion rippled through the US. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and he had to brace himself to avoid being thrown back. His ears rang from the deafening blast, but none of that mattered. His gaze was locked on the sky, on the falling remnants of what was left of Izuku. Ahead, still clad in its helmet, it crashed onto the cracked pavement near Icy Hot. The impact sent a sickening jolt through Katsuki's stomach. In the background, he barely registered the sound of doors bursting open, the sudden presence of pro-heroes storming the facility. The moment their trump card was gone, the villains had crumbled like a deck of cards, D-listers shaking in their boots as they were rounded up. But HNDJB and Smoker had already F'd off somewhere before anyone could stop them. Not that it mattered to Katsuki. Not right now. His entire world had narrowed to the sight in front of him, Shuto standing there, gripping Izuku's severed head with white-knuckled hands, yelling at it like it could hear him. And suddenly Katsuki wasn't at UA anymore. He was 9 years old again. Sitting stiffly on the couch, his whole body locked in place as he stared up at his mom. The hag never cried. She was never quiet. She was always loud, always sharp-tongued, always so damn sure of everything. But that day she was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Her voice had been hollow, a tone he'd never heard before. Never wanted to hear again. Inko and Izuku, she had swallowed hard. There was a villain attack. They didn't make it. That was the day everything changed. Katsuki's throat clenched. No, this couldn't be happening. Not again. Not after he just got Izuku back. He barely even started making up for all the shit he'd done. He couldn't lose him. Again. A soft, unexpected touch on his legs snapped him out of it. Katsuki jerked slightly, looking down to see a fuzzy paw resting against him. Principal Nedzu. The tiny BSRD was looking up at him, an unusual softness in his expression. Normally, Katsuki would have barked at anyone who dared to pity him. But this time, the words stuck in his throat. Somewhere, deep in the back of his mind, a small rational part of him noticed something strange. Nedzu wasn't worried, and that should have been a massive FING clue. Izuku had told him how Nedzu had basically adopted him. The way the nerd talked about the principal, it was obvious he saw Nedzu as his dad. Which, to be fair, wasn't hard when the alternative was that cheating fucker who F'd off to another family the moment Izuku didn't manifest the quirk he wanted. The hag had spent a long time ranting about just how much of a piece of shit he was. It was obvious that Nedzu saw Izuku as his kid too. Then why the hell wasn't he panicking? And then, finally the principal spoke. "He's fine," Nedzu said simply, his tone calm, like he was talking about the weather instead of a kid who just exploded. "Losing his physical body won't kill Izuku." Katsuki's breath hitched. "He'll be back," the principal continued, "as soon as his systems reboot." Katsuki almost collapsed onto his knees as the tension suddenly bled out from his body. His breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him like a wave. Izuku wasn't gone. His heart pounded in his chest, but the relief was almost overwhelming. A sharp breath left his mouth as his eyes flicked back to the head that Shudo was still holding, scolding it like a misbehaving cat. This should have been enough of a clue. In hindsight, it was almost too obvious. How the hell had he not put it together sooner? Katsuki was supposed to be smart, but right now he felt stupider than Pikachu. Thing nerd, he muttered under his breath, his tone gruff but filled with a strange warmth. Making me worry like that. The words caught in his throat as something akin to a laugh bubbled up. I'm gonna kill you. The air felt lighter now, but the chaos of the situation didn't quite fade. The teachers were bustling around, gathering the students and ushering them out of the facility. Everything felt like a blur as Katsuki walked through the aftermath, mind still spinning. Soon enough, he found himself sitting in a circle with his classmates, waiting for the hag to come get him. He crossed his arms tightly, trying not to let his thoughts wander. He definitely didn't eavesdrop on Raccoon Eyes talking to the plain-looking detective about Hobo-sensei and Marshmallow. He definitely didn't feel a slight wave of relief when he heard that both of them would be fine. Katsuki didn't care about them, he wasn't worried, damn it. It was just his hero training he was worried about. That's all. Without Hobo-sensei, the whole class schedule was going to be thrown off. He needed those classes if he was going to become such a great hero that the whole world would forget about All Might. His breath hitched as he thought about the number one hero. All Might. This whole mess had started because the villains had wanted to kill that blonde fraud and yet he didn't even bother to show up? Katsuki's hands tightened into fists as the bitter taste of disgust welled up in his chest. Just when he thought he couldn't lose any more respect for that man, he somehow managed to prove him wrong. What a joke. Before his thoughts could spiral any further, a ping sounded from his phone, and Katsuki noticed several of his classmates checking theirs as well. Annoyed, he pulled his own phone out, and his eyes narrowed at the group chat that had somehow popped up. He was sure it didn't exist earlier that day. Totally not Skynet. So, that's what I call an explosive performance. Hope no one got hurt. Katsuki gritted his teeth as he heard gasps followed by a few giggles. He didn't bother looking at who they came from, his fingers already furiously typing. King Explosion Murder, you blew up not even half an hour ago and you're already making puns about it? Totally not Skynet. Yep. King Explosion Murder, you're dead to me. Totally not Skynet. You love me. Katsuki scowled as the chat continued to ping, his irritation mounting. Sanic. I'm glad to learn that no permanent harm befell you, Sanic. Who gave me such an improper chat name? Totally not Skynet. Me. If it's Piku, you gotta admit, Ida. It really does. Piku, oh, come on, couldn't I at least be a Pikachu? Daft Punk, weren't you all brain fried just a minute ago? Daft Punk, also good choice. Love that band. Alien Queen, everyone got a nickname from Mitos? Alien Queen, hell yeah. I love you, Mitos. Katsuki let out a frustrated huff, finally shoving his phone back into his pocket. He didn't have time to deal with this nonsense right now. He definitely wasn't smiling. Why would he smile at those nerds bickering? 10110101100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100 Thanks to Izuku and the protocol toy box, no one but Shoyuta and Kuro's ended up seriously hurt. The majority of the students had only minor scratches before the toys arrived to help them. The only significant loss was Izuku's body, though in the grand scheme of things, that wasn't the heaviest blow to UA. All things considered, the outcome of the USJ attack was almost acceptable. Almost being the key word. Because even though the staff members were trained pro-heroes, ready to lay down their lives in the line of duty, both Shoyuta and Kuro's were also part of the UA staff. Part of Nedzu's family. Nedzu might like playing chess like a mastermind, but he would never see his friends and family as expendable pawns. He might struggle with understanding human emotions, but that didn't mean he was heartless. Shoyuta and 13 were still recovering in the hospital as the teachers, along with Detective Tsukachi, gathered in the conference room. Izuku stood at the front, using the projectors to display the footage from his memories of the event, everything up until he made the decision to self-destruct to take the Nomu down with him. As the video flickered off, a heavy silence hung in the air. No one seemed to know how to break it. That was disturbing. Hisashi finally spoke up, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Are you okay, little listener? It's just a machine." "Of course, it's fine," Yagi grumbled, barely noticing the death glares being sent his way. "I didn't ask you, Yagi," Hisashi snapped back, his tone sharp. Nezu could see that Izuku was holding back from snapping at All Might as well. As much as he never hid his hatred for the number one hero, he was professional enough to not antagonize him in important moments like this meeting. It was one of the many things that made Nezu so proud. Izuku quickly interjected before things could escalate. "I'm perfectly fine, Zashi-senpai." His voice was calm and assured. For all the functions MHIC had, pain receptors weren't one of them. "I felt nothing." Hisashi's gaze softened slightly, but he pressed on. "Still, it couldn't have been easy to make that call. Are you sure you're fine?" "I am." Izuku offered a reassuring smile, his tone steady. "I promise." "Truth." Naomasa nodded reflexively, only to freeze in place as he realized what just happened, his eyes locking onto Izuku with a sudden realization. "What the hell? My quirk." "Well, I believe we should go back to the matter at hand," Nezu interjected smoothly, cutting off the detective's train of thought. "There's a lot to discuss here." "Then let's start by addressing the blonde elephant in the room," Hisashi said, his voice sharper than usual as he turned to glare at Yagi. "I heard Nezu told you to run ahead to the USJ, but you never arrived. Where were you, All Might?" Of course, All Might didn't take kindly to being questioned. His jaw tightened as he shot a glare right back at Hisashi, already on the defensive. "I was already over my time limit," Yagi said curtly. "I couldn't just rush in and reveal myself. Japan still needs me." The room bristled at his words. It was exactly what they expected. They already knew. All Might was nothing but a show pony now, riding the wave of his symbol of peace image. He barely did any meaningful hero work anymore. His 3-hour limit, a limit that was dwindling even faster now that he had passed one for all to young Togata, was spent chasing down purse snatchers and other low-level criminals who could have been easily handled by any other hero in the area. Because it wasn't about the work. It was about being seen doing it. His entire focus was maintaining the illusion that he was still unstoppable. That the symbol of peace was still unshaken. But that couldn't be further from the truth. And not for the first time, Nezu found himself wondering, when did Yagi Toshinori change so much? Was it after his battle with All for One? In hindsight, the cracks were always there. The arrogance. The pride. Disguised behind pretty words about being a symbol for the people, for the world, always there, lurking beneath the surface. Gran Torino had tried so very hard to break that arrogance out of him. To mold him into someone who could live up to the potential that Shimura had seen in him. But in the end, it hadn't mattered. Because after his fight with All for One, All Might simply stopped trying to hide it. It was truly a shame. Nezu had always held immense respect for Nana Shimura. Everyone who had ever met her said the same. She had been strong, kind, and unwavering in her beliefs. But despite all her virtues, she had made 2 devastating mistakes. The first was giving up her son, believing that it would keep him safe. The second, perhaps the greater mistake, was choosing Toshinori Yagi as her successor. Nezu shook his head, forcing himself to push the thought aside. There was no use dwelling on the past. What was done was done. Now they had to deal with the consequences. He straightened, his sharp gaze locking onto Yagi, his expression hardening. When he spoke, his voice was cold-cutting. "All Might." The entire room froze. The tone in Nezu's voice sent a chill through everyone present. It was rare for him to use that tone, but when he did, everyone knew better than to speak over him. Even Yagi understood that now. "I never wanted to hire you," Nezu continued, his eyes narrowing slightly, staying fixed on Yagi. "I told you time after time. Being a teacher is more than just being a strong and experienced hero. It's about being capable of sharing that experience with the students, so they can grow to be better than us." He paused, letting the words settle. Not only did you refuse to listen to me, you went behind my back to the HPSC and forced my hand. From day one, you proved to be more than just a sloppy teacher. You let your biases interfere with your job. Netsu sighed, shaking his head in disappointment. 3 strikes, that was all I was willing to give you. I warned you several times, but you still believe you are untouchable, don't you? You're not. This is your 3rd and final strike. Without warning, All Might shot out of his seat, his form swelling for a brief moment, but the transformation was halted by a sudden red glow that enveloped the room. Erasure Field. It was a product of Izuku and Majima's research, created by studying the frequencies in Shuda's quirk. Unfortunately, they hadn't yet found a way to apply it beyond the expensive projectors UA had on hand. For now, the field could only be deployed in select areas like this meeting room, the detention room, and a few of UA's training facilities. But it was enough to stop the man in front of them. Though his quirk was suppressed, All Might's pride was not. He stomped his foot in frustration, his voice rising in a desperate roar. You can't do this. I'm All Might, the symbol of peace. You can't fire me. Netsu thought he couldn't be more disappointed by the man in front of him, but in that moment, he was wrong. Watching the supposed symbol of peace throw a tantrum like a spoiled child was a sight beyond pathetic. For a moment, the entire room was silent, save for the reverberating echo of Yagi's cries. I have nothing else to say to you. Except for... Netsu noticed the shift beside him, the manic grin slowly creeping onto Izuku's face. The mischievous glint in his eyes was unmistakable. He was ready. Netsu met his gaze, his own grin widening as the words lingered in the air. He gave a subtle nod, confirming what was about to happen. All Might, you're fired. As soon as the words left Netsu's lips, the floor beneath All Might cracked open. A hidden trapdoor sprang to life, swallowing him whole. Yagi's shocked scream echoed briefly, before it was swiftly muffled by the closing mechanism of the trapdoor, which slid shut with a quiet thud. The room fell into eerie silence. One less person. Izuku leaned back in his holographic chair with a satisfied sigh, breaking the stillness. Well, this felt nice. Despite the lingering tension in the room, a few soft chuckles broke through the heavy silence. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on anyone, but the tension seemed to ease, just for a second. It felt almost cathartic to finally be rid of All Might. But Netsu wasn't naive enough to think it was truly over. There was still so much to untangle, so many loose ends left to deal with. His mind, however, was already moving on to the next priority. His students. He couldn't afford to let their safety be compromised again. Not after everything that had happened. Perhaps this would be the final push he needed. The last excuse to convince the school board to approve the dormitories he had been trying to implement for years.
01001001010001000001000001001 1000000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000. The meeting dragged on for hours, and by the time everyone left, Izuku felt far less than he'd hoped for. The search for information on Shigaraki and Kurogyari had yielded almost nothing. No government records, no official traces. They were like ghosts, existing without a real identity. It was possible their names were aliases, but even then, they were complete unknowns, and Izuku hated unknowns. This was just another thing keeping him on edge. His mind couldn't rest, not with so many pieces still missing. Thanks to Nedzu's influence, Shoyuta and Kuro's were both placed in hospital rooms with cameras set up to monitor them around the clock. Izuku kept a careful watch on both of them, though they remained unconscious. No signs of them waking up anytime soon. The attacks still simmered in the back of his mind, making his virtual blood boil. His family had been hurt, he had almost lost them. And it was all because of Izuku, your eyes. His dad's voice broke through the storm of his thoughts. Izuku blinked, and the red shimmer in his eyes faded back to their usual green. Dad, Izuku exhaled slowly, trying to steady his breathing. I can't let it go. I almost lost my family because of All Might. I know you fired him, but it's not enough. Shoyuta and Kuro's almost died, just like with Mom. Izuku felt his dad's gaze soften, the sharpness of his beady eyes somehow providing more comfort than it did unease. It was a strange thing, that gaze, unsettling to most, but not to Izuku. If only his body hadn't been destroyed, he could really use a hug right now. It's still early. Nedzu's voice was calm, though there was a weight to the words. Izuku felt the guilt seep in. He knew it was too soon to make a move. Society wasn't ready for All Might's downfall, not yet. Like it or not, All Might was the symbol of peace. The pillar that held society together, even if it was all a fragile illusion. Everyone knew the truth. Izuku knew it, Nedzu knew it, most of the heroes knew it. But the masses, they still clung to the myth. Nedzu and Izuku had spent the last years carefully laying down the foundations for when All Might finally crumbled. They couldn't replace the pillar, it would crumble and bring down their current society down with it. What they could do, however, was to set a life net under that pillar to grab the people that would fall once the pillar crumbled. But despite all their work, they weren't ready yet. I know, Izuku whispered, his eyes dropping to the floor. The weight of everything was too much, and before he could stop it, the virtual tears started to gather in his eyes. Fear, anger, and frustration welled up inside him, all crashing together in a flood. Izuku felt something ruffle his hair. He blinked in surprise and looked up only to see a mouse cursor hovering just above his head. His gaze followed its movement, and when he looked forward, he spotted his dad sitting in front of his computer, one paw resting on the mouse. Only then did it hit him he had let his projection slip. He was back inside the computer now. The touch wasn't what he truly wanted, not even close, but still, it was reassuring. I know it's frustrating, Izuku, his dad said, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. Believe me, I also want to tear All Might to pieces for putting my pups in danger. Izuku nodded, his anger dimming just a little. I'm sorry for being unreasonable, Dad, he muttered. Your feelings don't care about logic. Never apologize for that, Izuku. His dad's voice softened, but there was a firmness beneath it. Besides, while it's true that we aren't ready for All Might's downfall just yet, that doesn't mean we can't start chipping away at his image. If society starts seeing the cracks now, it'll be much easier to bring him down later, don't you think? Izuku stilled, letting the words sink in. It was true. Right now, society saw All Might as a god, untouchable and infallible. But if they slowly revealed the flaws in the man behind the symbol, his eventual fall would be much smoother. A slow smirk crept onto Izuku's face. I'm glad you like the idea, his dad continued, amusement gleaming in his eyes. It'll definitely give you something to do while you're grounded. Izuku groaned. Oh, come on, Dad. It's not like I did it for fun. There was no other way to beat the Nomu. He pouted. His dad merely chuckled, tapping the mouse a few times so the cursor playfully flicked at Izuku's forehead. Excuses, he teased. You might have had no choice, but that doesn't mean there are no consequences. Izuku crossed his arms and looked away from him. Shudo is already going to ground me from using Meowdos. Then you can take the time to reflect about your reckless behavior. Nedzu replied, sounding far too amused about the situation. Just because it's nearly impossible to kill you doesn't mean you should go around blowing up millions of yen worth of an android body tailor-made for you. He said, shaking his head in mock disapproval. Izuku knew his dad wasn't really mad about it. Yes, MHSTIC cost nearly the same amount that the budget for the entrance exam and sports festival combined, but the money came from Nedzu's own pocket, and the Chimera was one of the richest people in the world, what with how high specs allowed him to read the stocks markets like it was a child's book. This grounding was more for teasing than anything else, but it didn't make it SCK any less. Izuku groaned and slouched, crossing his legs as he floated around on the computer window. You're really enjoying this, huh? I have no idea what you're talking about. Nedzu replied, though his grin was impossible to miss. Izuku could just sigh in frustration as he resigned himself to his face. He was grounded. Fine. He relented. How long will take to? A few months. Nedzu replied, not needing to hear the whole question. Higuri-kun is almost done with the new core, which should solve the overheating problems your core had. It should be ready a little before the midterm exams. Izuku blinked, the news hitting him with a bit of surprise. A few months wasn't as bad as he had feared, but it still meant more waiting than he was happy with. He floated a little closer to the screen, frustration simmering just beneath his calm expression. Alright, so no field work until MHSTIC 2 Malawian Kwaches is ready. Precisely, Nedzu replied, his voice almost too cheerful. Izuku sighed again, this time with an audible hint of irritation. Alright, I'll work behind the scenes for now. He paused for a moment, thinking about his next words. But I'm still calling the laundromat. Nedzu chuckled again, the sound rich and full of amusement. You're always welcome to call them. I've heard our old friend has been getting a little antsy since you last contacted him. Izuku grinned despite himself, a slight gleam in his eye. Well, I better get to it, then. See ya, Dad. With a flick of his projection, he vanished from the screen, leaving his dad to watch with that infuriating, knowing smile.
1001100100011000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000. 1001100110011001100110011001100. As Izuku's projection vanished from the screen, Nedzu let his grin slip away, replaced by a contemplative expression. He leaned back in his chair, letting out a quiet exhale as his gaze drifted toward the window, the soft light of the late afternoon casting long shadows across his office. His mind, however, was far from the peaceful image outside. It was still firmly focused on the boy who had just left. There was one more problem Nedzu needed to address. A problem he couldn't afford to let anyone else know about, not his staff, and especially not Izuku. He didn't want to think it, but he couldn't ignore it either. The circumstances of the recent attack were too convenient. The villains had come to gather information during the precise window when MIDOS had been offline. Then, mere days later, the attack on the students had unfolded. It was all too neatly timed. Nedzu's eyes narrowed, the sharp intelligence behind them giving way to the unease he was trying to suppress. He didn't want to entertain the idea, didn't want to believe it. But the numbers didn't lie. There was a better than 87% chance that there was a mole among them. The thought of a traitor within his ranks made his fur bristle, but he knew better than to jump to conclusions without evidence. And Nedzu wasn't one for rash decisions.
He couldn't bring this up with Izuku, not yet. Izuku would take the threat seriously, and the last thing Nezu wanted was to give him any reason to doubt his family. Izuku's loyalty to his loved ones was unwavering, but if he suspected someone, if he thought a mole existed, he would become relentless. Izuku would suspect everyone. He would go to great lengths to find the traitor, and when he did, he would stop at nothing to eliminate them. It would destroy him to even entertain the thought that one of them could betray him, but he would take it seriously, and each person under his scrutiny that turned out to be innocent would just make him feel guilty for having suspected them in the first place. He couldn't let Izuku down that path, at least not until he's sure there was a threat, and knew exactly who he had to direct his son towards. 87% was still too high a chance to ignore, though. While he wouldn't point any paws in accusation just yet, the investigation needed to start. He would get to the bottom of it, find the mole, and understand why they were doing this. If it was out of coercion, Nezu would be understanding. He would offer protection. But if they were simply a traitor for the sake of gain. Nezu's hand shifted to the scar over his right eye, his fingers brushing over the raised tissue as his gaze darkened, staring at the glowing screen in front of him. His mind was far from peaceful now. He was all too familiar with the art of making humans wish they had never crossed him. If someone had sold out his students, if someone was responsible for putting them in danger, Nezu would make sure they would regret it. Over the next few days, UA entered a rare lull. Classes were put on hold, giving the students time to rest and recover after the traumatic events at USJ. The air around the campus was heavy but calm, like the eye of a storm. News of All Might's firing hadn't reached the press yet, and that was no accident. Nezu was meticulous, ensuring every last detail of the process was airtight. He wouldn't allow Yagi to find a loophole or pull strings to claw his way back into UA. Not this time. The paperwork, the legal measures, the quiet talks with select officials, it was all being orchestrated to ensure that once it was public, it would be final. But Toshinori wasn't the type to go quietly. He was All Might, the symbol of peace, the pillar of society, the man who had single-handedly held Japan together for decades. And now, some overgrown rodent thought he could just cast him aside? Because he didn't agree with his clearly correct choice. On one side they had All Might, the symbol of peace, the one who held the whole Japan in his back, the most important and powerful figure in the world. On the other side, a bunch of stupid teenagers who would at best reach the top 50s, if they even graduated. Wasn't the choice obvious? The only one in that whole school who had any worth was his vessel. Young Togata was the one who would carry his torch and make sure All Might would still live on, even after his eventual retirement. The indignity burned in Toshinori's chest like acid. How dare Nezu treat him like this? How dare he undermine everything he had done, all he had sacrificed? How could he not understand how important Toshinori was? Acting like that, the principal of UA was no better than a villain. He was standing in All Might's way, and like any villain, he was going to be defeated by the symbol of peace. And he knew exactly who to talk to. Normally, securing a meeting with the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission was a long, tangled process. Even top heroes could expect to wait months for an audience. But Toshinori had long since learned that doors opened when he pushed hard enough. When he invoked his title. When he reminded them all of who he was. All Might didn't wait in lines. He didn't make appointments. So when he demanded a meeting, the HPSC made time. No one, not even her, could deny the symbol of peace. 01000110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100110011001100. Pathetic. That was the only word that echoed through Madame President's mind as she sat across from Yagi Toshinori, watching him rant and rave like a petulant child who'd just been denied dessert. This was the so-called symbol of peace? A man throwing a tantrum because someone finally told him no? He had no one to blame but himself. Yagi had practically begged her to intervene with Nezu, claiming it was vital he be placed at UA to guide his successor. She had weighed the risks. Letting All Might into Nedzu's territory was always a dangerous game, but in the end, she decided that having All Might owe her would be worth the risk of stepping in Nedzu's toes. UA wasn't just a school, it was the rat's domain, and no one who walked through its halls was beyond his reach. She'd made that very clear when she signed off on the arrangement. She warned him, follow Nedzu's rules. Show respect. Stay in your lane. Because inside UA, the rat was king. But Yagi, arrogant, deluded, untouchable in his own mind, had ignored everything. He bulldozed his way into a teaching position meant for someone else. His chosen successor wasn't even in the first-year class, and yet he insisted on forcing himself into that role, derailing entire curriculums in the process. He'd dead-named and harassed Majima Shuto repeatedly, clinging to old grudges and outdated beliefs even after Endeavor's disgrace and Shuto's legal adoption. He destroyed a very expensive robot unit that was worth more than what some heroes made in a year, put students in danger, disregarded protocol, and when the moment came to protect those students, he chose to protect himself. Now he was being held accountable, and the man had the gall to come to her, demanding she fix it. The HPSC would not be burning bridges with Nedzu for the sake of a broken man who had long outlived his purpose. Not when he was just a few months away from losing the last embers of One for All. Not when the world no longer needed All Might, but something stronger. Smarter. Before Yagi could continue his tirade, Madam President calmly reached beneath her desk and pulled out 2 heavy black folders. She dropped them between them with a resounding thud that silenced the hero mid-sentence. Yagi blinked, confused, eyes flicking between her face and the folders. "What is this?" he asked, already bristling. "Open it," she said flatly, voice like iron behind velvet. Yagi hesitated, his fingers trembling ever so slightly as he reached for the first folder, the heavier one. He opened it slowly, cautiously, as though sensing the weight of what lay inside. The first thing he saw was a photograph. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, beaming at the camera. Red hair, amber eyes, a bright, open smile. He stiffened. Recognition flickered behind his eyes. "Nagasawa Kahaku," Madam President began, her tone clinical. 23 years old at the time. Victim of a villain attack. You were in the area and managed to save her before the building collapsed. 27 people died. All male. She let that hang in the air for a moment, a quiet barb nestled in the facts. "Curious, isn't it?" Yagi didn't answer, eyes fixed on the photo. "You visited her a few times afterward. 3 months later, she claimed to be pregnant with your child." "That's not," he started, but the words were cut off before they could take shape. Of course, a scandal like that would have been catastrophic. You were the symbol of peace. You couldn't be associated with rumors like those. We conducted a DNA test. She tapped a corner of the page where the report confirmed it clearly. Father, Toshinori Yagi. She refused the hush money. So we had no choice. She's currently serving a sentence in Asphodel for defamation and slander against a pro-hero. Yagi's jaw tightened. Not that Madam President bore any delusions that the man felt bad for what happened to the woman. She was just a fling, and Yagi didn't hesitate to discard. He was, after all, quite vocal about how to deal with her once she started making claims. Asphodel, she added, almost offhandedly, isn't as notorious as Tartarus, but it gets the job done. We do need a place to keep the people that are too problematic to remain free. She flipped a page. The child was born prematurely, but he survived. We took him in. But, she sighed. Unfortunately, he was quirkless. He didn't survive the early training phase. Her voice held no emotion. No remorse. A shame. We hoped he'd be something special. Like hawks. But not every egg hatches right. Yagi's hands clenched as he turned the next page. Another photo. Another woman. Then another. Dozens. All familiar. All names and faces from his past. Most were people he'd saved, grateful, overwhelmed, vulnerable. Many ended up pregnant. Some accepted bribes. Others didn't. Those who resisted were buried in prisons or graves. Any children born were taken. Studied. Groomed. Disposed of if they didn't meet expectations. We went to great lengths to protect your image, Madam President said, her voice still as sharp as ever. Even when you did your best to sabotage it. She gestured toward the second folder. He opened it. More photos. These faces he didn't recognize. Some had notes listing large sums of money. Others had prison numbers. Some were marked deceased. These are the people who saw your true form. In alleyways. On rooftops. After fights. Too many. You were never careful. You exposed your weakened state so often, we had to create an entire protocol just to contain the damage. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. Because the symbol of peace couldn't afford to be anything less than perfect. Yagi looked up at her, seething. Why are you showing me this? His voice was low, barely restrained. Of course he hated being reminded that he wasn't flawless. That his legacy was a construction built on bones and silence. Madam President's smile was cool and thin. Because I need you to understand something very clearly. We do have every single one of those files. Stored for safety measures, of course. But these, she tapped the folders. These didn't come from our official archives. Not the HPSC. Yagi's blood ran cold. That meant someone else had this information. Someone outside the system. Someone like Netsu, he whispered, horror finally dawning. Madam President just sat back in her chair, folding her hands atop the desk. This is a threat, Yagi. Madam President's voice was cold steel, no pretense, no softness. Not from me but from reality. She gestured toward the dimming folders with a flick of her manicured hand. You made an enemy of someone not even the HPSC dares to provoke. And now? He holds your entire future in his paws. Everything we buried, everything we burned for your sake, he has it. All of it. You gave him the reason, and you gave him the ammunition. Her eyes narrowed, expression unreadable. One button. One press. That's all it takes for the public to learn who you really are. Not the beacon of peace. Not the flawless hero. Just a man drunk on his own legend, sitting on a fake throne made over the lives he ruined. She leaned in slowly, her voice dropping to a razor-sharp whisper. Do you know what that means, Toshinori? Silence stretched like a taut wire. It means you're done. No redemption arc. No glorious final stand. If he decides to go public, you'll lose everything. The press will swarm. The victims' families will rise. The public, your fans, they'll turn on you in seconds. Don't lie to yourself thinking your reputation will save you. The public turned against heroes for far less. You'll be remembered not as the greatest hero, but as the greatest lie. She straightened again, smoothing an invisible crease on her sleeve. So unless you really want to push Netsu to press that button, Madam President continued, her tone sharp as a scalpel, you'll stay quiet. You'll keep your head down. And you will not, under any circumstances, cross that rat again. Her eyes bore into him, unflinching. Then maybe Netsu will decide that preserving society's stability a little longer is worth more than dragging your legacy through the mud. And if you're lucky, you might get to enjoy your status for a few more months before he pulls the trigger. She leaned back in her chair, her voice cooling into something almost civil. Consider this piece of advice your last courtesy. For all the years we worked together, all the strings we pulled to protect your image. This is the only grace you'll get. She let the silence hang for a beat, watching his trembling hands, the way his jaw clenched around words he didn't dare speak. That will be all. She clapped twice sharp, deliberate, and the door opened. Two men in dark suits entered the room without a word. Yagi flinched slightly but didn't resist. The confidence, the bravado, the glow of the symbol of peace, all of it had vanished. What remained was a pale, shaken man, silently following the agents as they escorted him out. Madam President didn't watch him leave. She simply reached for her tea, as though the meeting had been nothing more than an inconvenience in her schedule. You thought you were the pillar holding up this house. But you forgot pillars can be replaced. Her eyes narrowed, sharp as knives. And some are better off torn down. A shame though, we invested so much in you. I really thought you'd last a little longer. Hopefully Lemillion will prove himself to be a more stable hero. Then, with clinical precision, she pressed a button on her desk and summoned her assistant.
Have legal go over our current ties to Yagi Tashinori. I want every contract, every asset, every endorsement linked to him flagged and reviewed for termination. Yes, Madam President. The assistant immediately replied. And notify public relations. Quietly prepare a contingency narrative. Just in case our dear rat decides not to wait. She hung up without waiting for a response. Because now, it was only a matter of time, and she needed to prepare. A war was about to start, and she didn't intend to lose.
01101001000110010001000100010000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000016 The rundown apartment was far from grand, yet there was an odd warmth in the air, a sense of camaraderie among the unlikely group gathered inside. It was a rare moment of peace, the calm before the storm. At the center of the room, La Brava sat hunched over a laptop, her fingers moving in a blur across the keyboard. Her brow furrowed with intense concentration, her eyes glued to the screen. The sound of quick typing filled the room, the soft clicking of keys almost rhythmic. A tall, silver-haired man in an impeccably extravagant suit approached her, a steaming cup of tea held delicately in his hand. He set it down beside her with a flourish, the aroma of jasmine filling the air. "How about a pause, my dear?" Denjuro's voice was smooth and lilting, the kind of tone that seemed to belong in a bygone era of grand ballrooms. "You've been at this for hours now. I just have 10 minutes left before the deadline, gentle," La Brava muttered without looking up, her eyes still locked on the screen. "I'm not about to lose another duel." "Huh, you winning against me-chan?" A voice called from across the room, playful and full of mischief. "Keep dreaming, Brava-chan." Denjuro chuckled, straightening the lapels of his lavish coat with a practiced hand. "Very well. Far be it from me to stand between you and digital victory." He added with a teasing smile, "Just promise me you'll drink your tea before it goes cold. It's one of the finer blends." La Brava didn't even flinch, her focus unbroken as she continued typing furiously. Denjuro, on the other hand, merely shook his head with an affectionate smile and moved over to the table where the others were gathered. At the table sat a girl with blonde hair tied into twin buns. A wide grin stretched across her face as her sharp fangs glinted in the dim light. She dropped 2 cards on the pile, her enthusiasm infectious. "Uno!" she shouted, her voice ringing out triumphantly. "Wait, Uno!" A second voice, gruff and confused, called from across the room. Spinner, a man with purple hair and green scales covering his entire body, glanced up from his cards. "I thought we were playing poker." "Nope, it's Uno," Himiko replied with a mischievous grin, clearly enjoying the chaos. "Right, Dabi-chan?" She poked the guy sitting next to her with her eyebrow, her playful energy radiating. Don't care," came the grumpy response from Dabi, his eyes narrowed as he stared at his hand. His voice was low and disinterested, the apathy practically dripping from every word. "I knew I should have kept playing Balatro," Spinner sighed, dropping his cards onto the table with a soft thud. "You're no fun, Dabi-chan," Himiko pouted, crossing her arms over her chest. "I'm bored. Where's the boss?" "He'll be here in a moment," Denjuro replied, taking a sip of his tea. "I believe he told me he came across an annoyance." His smile took on a hint of amusement. "I hope he remembers to at least wipe the blood this time. I just mopped the floor." No sooner had the words left his mouth than a knock echoed from the door, a single, sharp sound that instantly silenced the room. Everyone turned their attention toward it, the atmosphere suddenly growing more tense. Denjiro stood up smoothly, his every motion graceful and controlled as he made his way to the door. He opened it, and there stood the familiar figure, a man dressed in all black, with a red bandana tied around his head and a scarf draped around his neck. His face was obscured by a white cloth with 2 holes for his eyes, and a katana was sheathed on his back. His boots were clean this time, though his gloves were stained. "Well, nice of you to finally join us, Stendhal," Dabi said, a smirk tugging at his lips as he got up from his chair. "Dabi," the newcomer greeted curtly, his voice low and steady as his gaze swept the room. "So, we are all here. Good to know everyone is punctual." There was a shift in the room. The playful energy that had lingered among the group faltered, and a more serious tone settled in. Stendhal removed his katana from his back, setting it by the door with precision before walking into the room and taking a seat on the couch, the weight of his presence undeniable. Denjiro, ever the gracious host, offered him a cup of tea, but Stendhal simply shook his head and waved it away. No appreciation for the finer things in life, it seemed. "So, 2 minutes until the meeting," Spinner said, glancing at the clock on the wall. "How's it going with each?" "Ha!" La Brava cheered, her eyes wide with triumph as she slammed her hands down on the desk. "I'm in. I did it." The room erupted in a mix of groans and laughter as the tension briefly broke, but there was still a quiet sense of anticipation. The meeting was about to begin. Everyone knew it was time for business. The room practically buzzed with energy as La Brava connected the laptop to the projector, the screen flickering to life. The sight that greeted them made even Dabi raise an eyebrow. "You actually hacked me, Chan?" Himiko asked, wide-eyed and genuinely impressed. La Brava beamed, fingers forming a victorious peace sign. A moment later, the screen displayed a live feed of a young man with unruly green curls and a dusting of freckles across his face. He sat cross-legged on a spinning chair, wearing a flamboyantly tailored suit that rivaled Denjiro's, complete with a monocle perched over his right eye and a smug smile playing on his lips. Spinner burst out laughing. "Pay up, Dabi. I told you he'd go full gentle cosplay again." Dabi groaned, pulling a crumpled 1,000 yen note from his wallet and slapping it into Spinner's waiting hand. "This is rigged." "Looks like we're all here," the green-haired boy said with theatrical flair, spinning once in his chair before hopping to his feet with exaggerated pomp. "Gentlemen and lady, it's time to begin our meeting. Excellent work, La Brava. You've officially breached level 2. I'll be bumping it up next time. Am I again?" Himiko practically bounced in place, waving enthusiastically at the screen. The boy paused his performance, snorting as he plucked off the monocle and dropped the act. His voice softened as his outfit glitched into more casual clothes, worn jeans, red sneakers, and a shirt that had socks written on the front. "Hey, Himi. Missed you too," he said, offering a warm smile. "Glad to see everyone made it. Been a while since the whole laundromat was together." Both Dabi and Stendhal let out simultaneous groans. "Why the hell did we pick that name again?" Dabi muttered. "Because the other option was Toga and her merry maids," Stendhal deadpanned. "I still think that was a great name," Himiko huffed, crossing her arms. "I agree," Mito said, shrugging. "But we were outvoted, so here we are. The laundromat it is. Anyway." His tone shifted as he brought up the next topic. "Stendhal. Slide Go was found in an alley a few blocks from here. In bad shape. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Stendhal raised a brow and offered a shrug that was anything but innocent. "It's possible that I encountered him. And it's also possible that he might have tripped. And landed on my katana. Repeatedly. 10 or 20 times. Accidents happen." Mitos chuckled, shaking his head in mock disapproval. "A shame. So clumsy, that one." "Real tragedy," Spinner muttered with a smirk. "Such a slippery guy," Denjiro added, sipping his tea. "I heard the police found a ton of incriminating evidence on his phone," Mitos said casually. "Would be interesting to know how that got there." A knowing silence followed, before everyone shared a grin full of mischief and menace. "Well, don't leave us hanging," Dabi said, kicking his feet up on the table. "Who's the lucky BSRD this time?" "It must be someone big," Denjiro added, swirling his tea with a smirk. You don't summon the full circle for just anyone. Mitos didn't answer right away. He let the moment breathe, his grin widening with theatrical flair. Oh, it's someone big, alright. We're not pulling the curtain just yet, but tonight, we set the stage for the fall of a god. The room went quiet. They all knew exactly who he meant. No one needed a name. The laundromat had been founded for this very purpose. Every person in that room had a reason to bring the so-called symbol of peace crashing down. Denjiro's smile tightened as he took a sip from his cup. So, it's finally the hypocrite's turn. He remembered the day vividly, how All Might had personally arrested him for vigilantism, when all he'd done was use his quirk to catch civilians leaping from a burning building. That mark on his record crushed any hope of becoming a hero through the system. One act of compassion, and All Might made sure it cost him everything. The others carried scars just as deep. La Brava never forgot how they mocked her weak quirk. She found solace in the internet, found power in code. In her searches, she also found the truth-buried files, hidden settlements, quietly covered up scandals that all pointed back to the golden boy of hero society. Spinner? He didn't need classified files. He lived it. He was born with a mutation quirk. He watched his kind become statistics. Statistically, mutants were 46% more likely to die as collateral damage in All Might's battles. People with horns or tails or scales seemed invisible to the symbol of peace. The wrong kind of victims. Then there was Himiko. Her quirk made people squirm. Blood-related quirks always did. But when All Might mentioned them in an interview, called them unsettling, the hate crimes doubled overnight. Words had weight when spoken by gods. As for Dabi, he never explained. He didn't have to. Everyone understood that his hate burned colder than his flames. All Might represented everything he despised about the hero system. He'd once muttered, "He's half the reason I'll never see my family again." And no one had the nerve to ask for more. And finally, Stendhal, once the hero killer, once a believer. The man who had looked up to All Might more than anyone, only to have that idol shattered by the rot underneath the shine. He and Mitos had been planning this the longest. You've been holding back for years, Stendhal said calmly, his tone devoid of judgment, only quiet curiosity. You once said, society isn't ready to live without a symbol. So tell me what changed. Mitos's expression darkened. For just a flicker of a second, his eyes burned crimson. He crossed a line. Silence followed, heavy and anticipatory. But you're right. We're not bringing him down all at once, Mitos continued, regaining composure. This isn't about destroying a symbol overnight. It's about erosion. A slow, deliberate dismantling. We'll chip away at his reputation one crack at a time until the image crumbles, and people are forced to see the truth. Not a god. Just a man. Dabi gave a low whistle, smirking. Amen, that's cold. I really like it. So, Stendhal leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. Does this mean you're coming out of retirement? The room stilled. All eyes turned toward Mitos, brows furrowed in confusion until the screen flickered. The projection shimmered, and Mitos's appearance shifted. The casual hoodie and sneakers vanished, replaced by a sharply tailored suit in a familiar style. His eyes, now glowing a fierce red, stared into the camera with unsettling precision. And that smile, it was sharp enough to cut steel. His voice echoed, digitally distorted yet unmistakable. You bet I am. A chill ran through the room. Every one of them had heard that voice before, though it had been silent for years. Oh, shit, Dabi muttered, his usual smirk twisting into something halfway between shock and admiration. We've been working with you this whole time? His laugh came out dry and odd, like he'd just met a living legend. Denjiro set his teacup down with a soft clink. I suspected you were more than just a sentient AI. Still, it's an honor to be formally introduced. The projection looked over them all with a glint of satisfaction. The hero crusher is back in business. Stendhal said with a grin. Far away from there, inside a maximum security prison, a disgraced hero felt a shiver run down his spine. Something he hadn't felt in so many years, right before he was ruined. Todoroki Enji suddenly felt a small amount of relief that he was already here. Because despite how horrible Tartarus was, it was probably the safest place for him to be. If he believed in God, he would have prayed for whoever was going to be the victim this time. He was just glad it wasn't him again. The students all got a few days off after the USJ fiasco. Hitoshi could easily imagine most of them enjoying the extra time to relax. But not him. He was more than glad to go back to school the moment classes resumed. Every second he could spend away from that house was well spent time in his opinion. He didn't bother announcing that he was leaving. There was no point, and it was usually safer that way. As he adjusted the makeup around his mouth one last time, making sure nothing had smudged, a familiar knot tightened in his stomach. The last thing he needed was to give his fosters a reason to punish him. They were already good enough at making up excuses on their own. The train ride was its own kind of torture. Every pair of eyes seemed fixed on him like he was some kind of exhibit. Unfortunately, it was easy to recognize a UA uniform. It took everything not to snap at someone. Still, as far as most people could tell, he was just another kid from UA. Most people didn't know the small differences in uniform between courses, so they wouldn't be able to tell Hitoshi was a hero student. He didn't look much the part in the first place. Given his tired glare and the way his hands stayed firmly stuffed in his pockets, nobody dared to come too close. That was at least a small mercy. By the time he finally stepped onto UA's campus, his shoulders felt a little lighter. Strange, how much more this place felt like home than anywhere he'd been since he was 5. As he neared his usual path to class, something under a nearby tree caught his eye. One of the more cartoonish meows was sprawled on its back, looking for all the world like a real, sleepy cat. Hitoshi paused, a slow smirk creeping onto his face. A terrible idea sparked in his mind. What was the worst that could happen?
0001100110011001100110010. 00011001100110010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000010000000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000100000 Shudo's dad always arrived at UA early, and most mornings, Shudo would simply ride in with him. It was a quiet routine. He'd usually kill the extra time in the support labs, tinkering with a gadget or reviewing some blueprints. But today was different. Today, he decided to head straight to class as soon as they parked. Mostly because there were two people on his mind, Bakugo and Shinso. Shinso hadn't been injured at the USJ, but Shudo had noticed the look on his face when they'd all been dismissed to go home after the incident, a kind of quiet dejection that felt all too familiar. Maybe it was nothing, maybe Shudo was just seeing his own past reflected back at him, but if something was wrong, someone had to notice. And if Shudo could get any real evidence that something was off, he knew exactly who to tell, Uncle Sho or Izuku. And then there was Bakugo. He was hardly someone Shudo would call a friend. Barely an acquaintance, if anything. Loud, aggressive, and perpetually bristling. But Bakugo's reaction to Izuku's self-destruction at the USJ had lodged itself in Shudo's thoughts and refused to leave. That moment had all but confirmed his suspicion. Bakugo knew Izuku. And given how determined Izuku was to hide his past, Bakugo's knowledge could only mean one thing. Bakugo didn't know just Mitos. He actually knew the Izuku from before the accident, or rather murder, that took Izuku's body. Maybe it was none of Shudo's business, but Izuku was his best friend. No, more than that, Shudo owed Izuku his very life. Because before Izuku interfered with his life,
What Shudo was doing couldn't even be considered living. Izuku was the reason Shudo has a loving father now. The reason his whole family was saved. The reason his mother was about to come home from that mental hospital, whole and healed. The reason his SPRM donor was locked away forever, no longer a threat. Izuku had saved all of them without expecting anything in return. And so Shudo decided that looking out for Izuku, especially now, was the very least he could do. When Shudo stepped into the classroom, the first thing that caught his eye was Hitoshi at his desk, suspiciously alert, eyes flicking to his backpack every few seconds. The bag itself looked suspiciously overstuffed and, if Shudo wasn't mistaken, something was definitely moving inside it. Shudo bit back a knowing smirk. Oh yeah, Izuku owed him 500 yen. Casually, Shudo approached. Shinso stiffened at first, looking up with a snarl on his face, then immediately relaxed when he recognized him. Hey, Peppermint, Shinso greeted, voice a touch rougher than usual. Shudo mentally tucked that observation away for later. Hi, Shinso, Shudo replied easily. You always this early? Pretty much. Gives me time to. Meow, help me. I'm being catnapped, a tiny robotic voice suddenly called from inside Hitoshi's bag. Shudo's brow arched. What do you have there? My lunch, Shinso replied too quickly as a little robotic tail popped out of the zipper. Eyes widening, Hitoshi frantically pushed it back in. Quiet, lunch, he hissed. But the tail just slipped out the other side. Quiet, lunch, he repeated, hands moving faster to keep up with the wiggling appendage. That was it. Shudo burst into a full, bright laugh. You do realize Aizawa-sensei will see right through this, right? He teased, arms folding across his chest. I'll die trying, Shinso answered in a dead serious tone, which only made Shudo laugh harder. All right, Shudo finally said with a shrug. Meowdos, standby mode. Admin command recognized. Entering standby mode, the robotic voice answered. Instantly, the movement stopped and the tail disappeared into the bag as if it had never been there. Shudo grinned. Yep, Izuku definitely owed him 500 yen. I forgot you actually built those things, Hitoshi muttered as he shoved the robotic cat deeper into his bag, making sure no tail or ear peeked out again. Shudo smirked. I'd offer to build you one, but I guess you prefer playing on hard mode. Hitoshi just shrugged, lips twitching like he wanted to smile but wouldn't let himself. They kept chatting for a few minutes, comfortable in the quiet, until the door banged open and Bakugu stormed in. His eyes swept the room, locked onto Shudo, and for once, instead of barking out something loud and aggressive, he lifted his hands and started signing. Rooftop. Lunchtime. Don't be late or I'll kill you. He dropped his hands, stalked to his desk, and kicked his feet up on top like nothing happened. Hitoshi blinked. Didn't know he could sign. He glanced at Shudo, smirking now. So, was that a challenge or a love confession? Shudo stared at the spot where Bakugu had been standing, still processing. Neither, he said slowly. I think. Shudo was pretty sure he already knew what Bakugu wanted to talk about, but he didn't have long to dwell on it. Moments later, the classroom door swung open again, this time revealing his uncle. Uncle Shoyuta looked better than Shudo had expected. The last time he'd seen him, he was half-conscious and covered in blood. Now he was swaddled like a mummy, face bandaged and arms encased in casts. Even so, Shudo had a feeling Granny Chio had gone overboard with the bandages just to be safe. The entire class froze for a second, then exploded into chaos. Aizawa-sensei? You're here? Shouldn't you still be in the hospital? Uncle Shoyuta gave them all a long, tired look before the red glint of his quirk silenced them. The transformation was instant. The chatter died, and every student sat up a little straighter in their seats. As you can see, Uncle Shoyuta said flatly, I'm fine. I don't know if I'd call that fine, Shudo heard Shinso murmur beside him. My well-being isn't important, Uncle Shoyuta went on, and though his eyes flicked toward Shinso, he ignored the comment. Right now, we have other matters to address. About these, That single word was enough to make the room tense up all over again. You all did well, Uncle Shoyuta continued. You kept yourselves safe despite being put in impossible odds. Bakugu, Shoji, Ashido, good work on the first aid. 13 would be in much worse shape if not for you. Sensei. Uraraka shot her hand up anxiously. Is 13 okay? Still at the hospital, Uncle Shoyuta replied, voice as even as ever. But they're expected to make a full recovery. They'll be back by the end of the month. Everyone let out a collective breath of relief at the news. I do have a few things to say about what happened, Uncle Shoyuta continued, his gaze sweeping across the room. Despite the exhaustion in his posture, there was a gravity to his words that made everyone lean in. First, he began, I want to apologize. You were never supposed to face anything like that. The honesty in his tone was undeniable, a rare softness beneath his usual gruff exterior. The fact that villains breached our security and put you all at risk is something the staff is taking extremely seriously. Steps are already being taken so it never happens again. That is my word to you. He paused, allowing the weight of it to settle. You're training to become heroes, he went on. And yes, this path is dangerous. Death will always be a risk. But not here. Not while you're under our watch. UA is meant to be a place where you can grow. Without fear for your life. That's my promise. Uncle Shoyuta let the words hang in the air before moving to his next point. Which brings me to the second subject, All Might. The mention of the hero's name pulled a tense ripple across the class. All Might was meant to be at the UJ, Uncle Shoyuta said evenly. But as you noticed, he never showed up. That lack of professionalism combined with several other factors led to his immediate dismissal. All Might is no longer a member of UA's faculty. Frankly, I only regret that it didn't happen sooner. A moment of stunned silence followed before the class broke into loud cheers. Even though they'd only had a few lessons with him, most of them already considered All Might the worst teacher they'd ever had, and that was saying a lot, considering some of the schools they'd attended before UA. Once the room had finally quieted down again, Ida raised his hand. Sensei, who will be replacing All Might? He asked. For now, Uncle Shoyuta replied, his classes will be taken over by me for your class, and can Vlad King for 1B. Mitos will also be assisting both of us. Didn't Mitos blow up at the USJ? Kaminari blurted, looking around nervously. A few other students stiffened at the reminder. Oh, come on, guys. Izuku's voice suddenly chimed in cheerfully through the speakers. I'm a computer program. Just because my last body is in pieces doesn't mean I can't help. Trust me, I'm perfectly fine. Back at full functionality and ready to go. A few of the students chuckled as the tension in the room eased. With that out of the way, Uncle Shoyuta said, eyes gleaming with an ominous edge, we'll return to our regular lessons. Trust me, you'll need all the preparation you can get for what's coming. A ripple of unease ran through the classroom as everyone wondered what sadistic surprise their teacher had in store. Stop scaring everyone, Sho. Izuku's voice piped up through the speakers just as the windows darkened and a projector hummed to life overhead. A few students chuckled at the cutesy nickname, the tension broken for a brief moment. It didn't last long. One sharp glare from Uncle Shoyuta was enough to snap them all back to attention. I swear to God, problem child, Aizawa muttered under his breath as he spun to face the blackboard. An image of the UA stadium flashed onto the screen. The UA Sports Festival will be held in 2 weeks. For a split second, there was silence as the words sunk in, then the entire class erupted into excited cheering. Almost everyone had watched the UA Sports Festival on television before. Shudo was no exception. Back when Endeavor still dictated his every move, he'd been forced to sit and study the students' matches, memorizing their quirks and analyzing how he would fight them. That had changed after his adoption. Dad had started a tradition of taking him along with Natsuo and Fuyumi to watch the festival live. Even Tuya had come along once after he stopped playing dead, though he rarely stayed long. Big crowds weren't really his thing. Still, those visits had always felt special. Freed from scrutiny, surrounded by his siblings, he'd been able to just enjoy a family bonding event. Shudo's hands curled into fists at his sides. This was finally his chance to prove himself not only as a hero student, but as someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the support course he so admired. Before he could get lost in thought, the image on the projector screen shifted with a silly pop. and a chibi version of Izuku appeared. This miniature version of him was dressed in an oversized suit, comically large round glasses perched on his nose, a fake mustache glued to his face, and a wooden pointer in one hand. The entire class burst into laughter. Even Bakugo huffed in reluctant amusement. Ahem. Chibiuzu coughed into his fist, mimicking a professor to a T. Now then, my students, he began in a ridiculous accent, dramatically slapping the ruler against a new graphic on the screen. As I'm sure you all know, the sports festival is vitally important not just to Japan, but to your futures. The slide flipped to a bright chart. This is where pro heroes come to scout promising talent, Chibiuzu continued. That's one of the biggest perks of attending UA. Even a single good showing can put you ahead of the curve. After all, a strong mentor can make all the difference in the life of a hero. He gestured grandly toward the screen as data appeared, graphs mapping heroes' careers against their sports festival results. Even at a glance, the trend was obvious. Over 70% of top 50 pro heroes had earned strong internships during their UA days. Many of those had stayed in the top 100 most of their careers, barring career-ending injuries. In contrast, those who failed to impress or missed out on good placements rarely cracked the top 500, and almost never broke into the top ranks. One chance per year, Uncle Shoyuta reminded them, voice dry. And only 3 years in total. This isn't an opportunity you can waste. He paused, one brow arched. Of course, if you plan on going underground like me, then come see me after class. I'll have you sign the paperwork, and we'll record a private demonstration of your skills. Those recordings will be sent to a panel of UA-trusted underground pros. They'll decide if you're worth a nomination. A small ripple of murmurs passed through the room at that, some students already pondering their paths. Still, most were locked in on the event ahead, none of them intending to miss their shot at the biggest stage UA had to offer. Shudo's mind was already bursting with ideas for what the gadgets he wanted to show off. Shudo could have taken his time just for the fun of it. He was pretty sure Bakugo would have been mad as hell if he made him wait, and honestly, watching him stew in his own rage would have been hilarious. But he didn't. Whatever Bakugo wanted to talk about, Shudo had a feeling it was important. So, the moment the lunch bell rang, he grabbed his bento and headed straight for the rooftop. In most schools, the rooftop would have been off-limits, door locked, access denied. But this was UA. The rooftop was ringed with tall, reinforced fencing, embedded with motion sensors and monitored constantly. Between the security cameras and Mitos watching everything like a hawk, there was no real reason to keep students away so long as they weren't doing anything reckless. Over the years Shudo had lived with Higuri, he'd met plenty of students who preferred to eat. Up there, himself included. It was quiet, open, peaceful. No crowds. No noise. No pressure. On the days he wasn't buried in the support labs, tinkering with gadgets, Shudo would usually come up here, find a sunny spot, let a meow dose curl up in his lap, and listen to Izuku ramble through the rooftop speakers, nerding out over hero history or weird combat theories only he could make sound interesting. Today, though, Izuku's voice wasn't echoing through the speakers. The rooftop was silent, save for the wind brushing against the fencing and the low hum of the city below. Bakugo was already there when Shudo arrived, sitting cross-legged with a lunchbox cracked open beside him, something so spicy the smell alone made Shudo's eyes sting. The blonde looked like he was ready to explode just from existing, but he didn't say a word when Shudo approached. Shudo didn't say anything either. He just walked over, sat down beside him, and opened his own lunchbox with practiced calm. The clack of chopsticks, the rustle of wrappers, the scent of warm rice and grilled vegetables. You could hear a pin drop over the silence. Shudo didn't press. He just waited, letting Bakugo gather his thoughts. You know, Bakugo started. It wasn't a question. What do I know? Shudo asked anyway because he needed to be sure. No assumptions. Not with this. Don't play dumb, icy hot. Bakugo snapped. Mitos. Izuku. You know, don't you? So do you, Shudo replied calmly. Why? Bakugo hesitated, his scowl twitching, less from anger than uncertainty. Before. The pause. Our moms were best friends. We grew practically as brothers. I started being an idiot. He said it like he hated himself for it. Shudo didn't judge. Kids did stupid things. Shudo had gone through his own brand of self-destruction, refusing to use his fire for years, thinking it would make him like him. It had taken therapy, love, and time to dig himself out of that hole. Even now, there were days he caught a glimpse of his father in the mirror when he looked at the left side of his face. I figured it out, Shudo offered after a minute of silence. He told me he was an AI, but it didn't add up. He was too human. Eventually, I got him to tell me his name. A faint chuckle escaped him. Took a bribe though. He wanted ice cream. After he got a working body. Bakugo barked out a short laugh. Of course that DMN nerd's still addicted to sweets. Does he still like cotton candy ice cream? With extra caramel topping? Shudo said back. Take a guess. Figures. Bakugo shook his head, a small smirk tugging at his mouth despite himself. One time, back when he was sleeping over, we were already starting to fall out, but it wasn't that bad yet. My mom went out to buy something. I think she was gonna bake a cake? Anyway, she forgot to lock the cabinet. I was mostly ignoring him by then, so I didn't even notice when he wandered off. His smirk widened. When the hag got back, the nerd had broken into the sugar stash and ate the whole FING pot. He was practically climbing the walls. Couldn't stop talking. Sprinted laps around the living room for a solid hour. The hag had to chase him around the house for a full hour before she finally got him to calm down. Shudo laughed softly at the mental image. It sounded just like the Izuku he knew. He isn't much different now. Though I think he can't have sugar highs anymore, Shudo said, eyes drifting up to the open sky. He hesitated, then added quietly, I wish I'd gotten to know him when he was alive. Didn't quite feel right. Izuku was still alive, just different now. It took me thinking he was dead to realize I didn't hate him, Bakugo admitted, voice low. Even then it took me a while. I realized too late how much I missed him. Shudo wasn't sure why Bakugo was sharing all this. Maybe even Bakugo didn't fully understand. When I finally talked to him, he just forgave me. For everything I did. That idiot couldn't even be mad at me. I know I deserved at least one punch. He's too nice. You can say that again, Shudo agreed with a smile. Though he can be terrifying. I still remember what he did to Endeavor. He's just like Auntie Inko, Bakugo replied, a strange softness in his tone. She was nice like him. But when she got angry, even the hag got the hell out of her way. She was completely merciless. The silence stretched between them for a few moments. Finally Shudo asked, Why are you telling me all that? Bakugo hesitated for a moment, then shrugged with a half-smirk. I have no effing idea, he said, voice low but without the usual edge. And if you tell anyone this happened, I'll blow you to FING pieces. There was no real bite in his tone, more like a warning wrapped in dry humor. Crystal clear, Shudo replied with a chuckle. Good. Now, Bakugo was cut off by the sharp ping of his phone. He took out his phone, and Shudo looked at the message over his shoulder. Totally not Skynet. So, I'm glad you two are getting along, but you really need to work on your situational awareness. Bakugo blinked at the message, glancing up. Shudo followed his gaze just in time to see the rooftop door swing open on its own, revealing Shinso standing awkwardly in the doorway. Huh, Shinso cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable. Eavesdropping? Shudo raised an eyebrow. In my defense, I thought you two were about to go into a fight to the death, Shinso said awkwardly. So I wanted to be around in case I needed to intervene. He paused, then added, So, Mitos isn't actually an AI. Shudo smirked, watching the interaction with quiet amusement. Ugh, we SCK at keeping secrets, Bakugo grumbled, rubbing his face like he was trying to erase the whole conversation. Shudo just shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. I mean, it's been years and half the staff still haven't realized. Whatever, Bakugo muttered, then shot Shinso a sharp glare. Oi, Panda Man. All Might. Shinsu's eyes darkened immediately at the mention of the name. He can die in a ditch and have his corpse eaten by the rats for all I care, he said, voice dripping with venom. Bakugo's phone pinged again. Totally not Skynet. Oh, great answer. Totally not Skynet. You can tell him the secret. Bakugo let out a rough laugh, shaking his head. Great. Welcome to the team. It's a Luong story. Shinso looked at his phone, then back at Bakugo. Well, we have some time left. Bakugo laughed again, and Shinso stepped closer. The three of them settled down, and Bakugo and Shudo took turns explaining the whole story to Shinso. By the end, Shinso's hatred for All Might grew even stronger on top of whatever personal reasons he already had. The group had grown. Shudo and Bakugo weren't exactly friends. Maybe frenemies? It was hard to put a label on it. But what mattered was the agreement they shared now. The two of them, plus Shinso now, would watch out for Izuku. Together. 01001001. Izuku would have loved to stay up on the rooftop, chatting with Shudo, Kaken, and Hitoshi. It was rare for the three of them to be in one place and not immediately at each other's throats. Or rather, Kaken be at everyone's throats while Hitoshi reeled him up. But as much as he wanted to linger, he was technically still on the clock and unlike the students, he didn't get a lunch break. Granted, most of his work by now ran on autopilot. Monitoring the entire school's camera network took up about as much of his processing power as a human rubbing their stomach and patting their head at the same time. But every so often, something popped up that needed more than background attention. Like now. A message had just come through on the MIDOS app, the school's integrated student assistance chat. On the surface, it was a way to ask questions, get quick answers, or report minor issues. But Izuku had embedded several discrete codes in the system, so certain students could ask for help without drawing attention to themselves. The latest message was short. The fridge is acting up. Can you check the break room? But Izuku knew what it really meant. Someone's acting off. Can we talk in private? The message had come from Tamaki's smartphone, 17 seconds ago. East Wing, 2nd floor. Near the staff lounge. No alerts had triggered in the area, no loud voices, no tripped sensors, nothing out of the ordinary. But that didn't matter. Izuku trusted Tamaki's instincts. Izuku was one of the few people Tamaki was close with. The older student didn't know MIDOS was anything more than a highly advanced program, which might have been why he felt comfortable talking to it. The pressure of face-to-face interaction didn't exist when he thought he was a programmed machine. Izuku had originally given Tamaki his private codes as a way to check in when things became too overwhelming. But over time, Tamaki had come up with his own variations, coded phrases he used to tip Izuku off to bullying, distress, or things that simply didn't feel right. He'd been the one to report an upperclassman bullying first years last spring. Discreet, effective, and always driven by concern for others, no matter how anxious he was. Tamaki might have always seen himself as the shy one in the background, but Izuku knew better. He was one of the big three for a good reason, and Izuku couldn't be prouder of him. Izuku moved quickly to the break room from where the message had come. As he entered, he locked the door and deactivated all cameras in the room except for the one he used to see and hear Tamaki, just to give him some privacy and ease his nerves. Then he activated the projector on the wall. His figure flickered to life, still in the form of his 9-year-old self. Even though Izuku was technically 15 now and could easily present as a teenager, this younger appearance felt more natural, closer to how his body had been when he died, rather than some idealized version of what he thought he should look like now. He didn't like to dwell on it. Despite all the therapy with Inui-san, thinking too much about his past life stirred existential anxieties he wasn't ready to face. Trying to change his projection's form too much left him feeling body dysphoria. So, he stuck with the form that felt right, that small, earnest 9-year-old. Izuku's gaze settled on Tamaki, who sat curled into a bean bag, gripping his phone tightly, his face drawn and tense. When he heard the door lock, he looked up, anxiety flickering in his eyes before easing at the sight of Imides's familiar small figure standing nearby. "You came," Tamaki whispered. "I always come, Tamaki," Izuku said gently, offering a warm smile. He moved forward, settling down beside him on the beanbag. "What's going on?" Tamaki's expression shifted in an instant. The nervous edges of his demeanor melted away, replaced by something sharper, steadier. Izuku recognized it immediately, not Amajiki Tamaki, the anxious student, but Sun Eater, The quiet force who, in Izuku's humble opinion, stood at the very top of the big three. "It's Mirio," Tamaki said, his voice low but resolute. "He's changing. Ever since he started working with Sir Night Eye again. I don't like it." Izuku felt the familiar pull of tension in his chest. He managed to keep his face neutral, but his thoughts turned cold. He had never liked Sir Night Eye. The man wasn't a villain, not bad like All Might, not even close, but that didn't mean he wasn't dangerous in his own way. Sir was completely disconnected from the world. He saw everything through a lens of probability and prophecy, always looking forward, never stopping to see what was right in front of him. Everything was about the greater good with that man. It didn't care who had to suffer in the present. Izuku leaned forward slightly, his tone calm, steady. "What do you mean, changing? What's he doing?" Tamaki frowned. "This'll sound weird, I know, but he's smiling too much. Laughing too much." Izuku tilted his head. "Go on." "I know," Tamaki added quickly. "I should be happy. I mean, Mirio's always been the cheerful one. But this feels wrong." "Trust your instincts, Tamaki," Izuku said gently. "What are they telling you?" Tamaki took a long breath and finally met Izuku's eyes. "His smiles are fake. His laughs don't sound like him. He used to smile like the sun, you know? Right. But now," he hesitated, then looked down. "Now they don't reach his eyes. He keeps saying everything's fine. Over and over. Like he's trying to convince himself." Izuku's expression tightened as Tamaki pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward the projection. "He showed me this earlier. Said he was thinking about changing his costume. Growing his hair out too." The moment Izuku saw the drawing, his stomach dropped. Red, white, gold. A few differences like the long cape and flared shoulder pads, but the heroic silhouette was unmistakable. It was All Might's. Izuku leaned back, the smile gone from his face. "That's not good," he said quietly. Tamaki flinched. "Yeah. That's what I was afraid you'd say." Izuku was silent for a moment, his mind racing. Then he looked back at Tamaki with a gentle, reassuring expression. "I'll talk to him. I won't mention you, I promise. But you were right to bring this up." Tamaki nodded slowly, his worry still evident. "Tamaki," Izuku added, voice thoughtful, "do you know if Mirio's been spending extended time alone with Sir lately?" "Yeah. The last 2 weekends. Said it was intensive training and strategy review." "Why?" Izuku's eyes darkened slightly. "Just a hunch." There was a pause. Then Izuku gave Tamaki a warm smile. "You did good. Really. Just keep being there for him. He needs someone who sees through the act. He's lucky to have you." "It's the other way around," Tamaki mumbled, a red flush creeping up his neck. Izuku's grin turned sly. "I dunno. I think you've got more of a chance with him than you think." Tamaki made a strangled noise, scrambling to his feet. I should get back to class. Thanks for listening, Mitos." He gave a quick bow, cheeks still burning, and bolted for the door. Izuku unlocked it with a flick of thought, watching Tamaki disappear down the hallway with a small, amused smirk. But the smirk didn't last. The moment Tamaki was out of sight, Izuku's expression darkened. He'd been so focused on watching All Might he hadn't thought to watch Sir. But of course, Sir would try to turn Mirio into the next All Might. The man was obsessed with All Might. Izuku was almost sure the only reason All Might even kept him close in the past was to slide his own ego even more. Sir Night Eye wasn't ready to live in a world without All Might. Whether he still thought All Might was the perfect symbol of peace, or he just thought he was a necessary evil the world couldn't live without, it mattered little. This wasn't just influence. This was grooming. And if it kept going, UA would have no choice but to intervene. Izuku knew Netsu would back him. The principal didn't tolerate threats to his students' autonomy, not from villains, and not from pro-heroes either. And neither would Izuku. He wouldn't let another kid die because of All Might's ego. Literally or metaphorically. 01001001. Netsu hated this. He hated suspecting his staff, his family. But until he had answers, everyone was a suspect. He'd cleared most of them quickly. Their alibis were solid, timelines airtight.
Shoyuta, for instance, had been right in the thick of things, holding back the press with Hizashi during the break-in, and later nearly losing his life at the USJ. Netsu had never truly suspected him, but due diligence was non-negotiable. Still, something wasn't adding up. It was subtle, almost too subtle. A gap in the system logs. A chunk of data missing, time-stamped precisely when Izuku had been offline for maintenance. The exact window when the press had broken through UA's barrier. That information was supposed to be classified. Only his staff, and Shudo, knew Izuku would be down that day. Fewer still had access to his mainframe. Netsu could count them on one paw. His small claws flexed against the edge of his desk. He bared his teeth at the screen and started typing rapidly on his custom keyboard. Whoever had deleted that log did a great job covering their tracks. Unfortunately for them, they hadn't counted on him. The log recompiled under his guidance, and the pieces began to snap into place. The cameras in the corridor leading to the staff lounge were all disabled. The Meowdos were redirected to other patrol routes. The Barkdos still on duty had sent a single distress ping before going offline permanently. Someone had cleared the path. And someone very specific had issued the override commands. Netsu's eyes narrowed as the system ID flashed across the screen, stamped cleanly at the end of the restored log. He stared at it in silence. The names sat heavy on the screen. Netsu's paw tightened around the teacup as he poured himself a drink. He took a long, slow sip, letting the warmth center him. This didn't make sense. Not him. Netsu trusted him with his life. He couldn't fathom the possibility he would ever betray his trust like that. But emotion had no place in this investigation. Not now. Not until he had the truth. One thing was clear, it was time to ask some very difficult questions. With a deep sigh, Netsu jumped from his chair and went to refill his tea. He'll need a lot to get through this. As he left, the log screen was still open. A single name flashing damningly on the screen. Majima Higuri.